go. All right, everyone, welcome to Reality Check. It is the Wednesday, midday, midweek edition of Reality Check here on the home of Black Talk Media, none other than WURD. Welcome to the program. It's our post-debate edition. It's our post-first presidential debate edition of Reality Check here on WURD. I'm Charles Ellison. I'm your host, executive producer, and also creator of Reality Check, also somewhat worn out, tired, and fatigued host and executive producer. Had a long night. It was a very long night. Stayed up late last night as we were, watching the debate, the first presidential debate between Joe Biden, former Vice President Joe Biden, and current President Donald Trump. And obviously, the assessment was not very flattering of the whole affair. People were wondering if it was even a debate. And I suspect that a lot of people tuned out probably 30, 45 minutes in. The first, probably 30 minutes in, I would wager to say that just because of how embarrassing it was to watch. But definitely, we stayed up late, watched that, and also talked with a lot of people to get sort of their take on what exactly transpired, and also getting a sense of, in addition to that, getting a sense of what the various pundits were saying, cable outlets, etc. I actually have joining us at the top of the 10 o'clock hour, at the top of the Wednesday edition, David Seaton. He is host of the Buchanan and Seaton Show on our partner station, our good friends, our family up in Chicago, WVON in Chicago, great station and great show, Buchanan and Seaton Show. So every now and then we bring on David Seaton. David, how are you doing, man? Can you hear me?
Doing great. Thanks for having me on this morning.
All right. No, thanks for joining us. Really appreciate this. So what are your first takes? Let me let you go at it. What are your first takes on this debate that took place last night?
I've got to say, my first initial impression is that Donald Trump is obviously scared. He was so pugnacious. He was very combative just throughout the entire hour and a half. It was quite obvious that he was unprepared to discuss the actual topics, so he instead chose to just be as combative as possible. So he was just there for style. He was all style, no substance, classic Trump.
Yeah. No, that's what I got from that as well. Should Biden even agree to participate in the next two debates?
Well, I had said very early on, even before when this is going back 60 days, and I think I might have even said it on your show, that Joe Biden should have initially, his strategy should have been, you know what, I'm going to step away from the debate. I'm not going to participate. Let Trump, do what he was going to do in the media, and then come back and say to Trump, you know what, I'll participate on the condition that we have a real-time fact checker at the debate. Then it would have put the onus on Trump. He would have had to accept it, and then the debate format last night would have gone completely differently.
Do you think so? I mean, do fact checkers really, I mean, are they in any way, because I noticed that Biden didn't do a whole lot of that. I noticed that over the past several years, fact checkers, they may be quite useful and exercise for us as we're watching all of this nonsense, as we're watching this dumpster fire, as a lot of people are noting, as we we watch the country spiraling out of control. But is that really effective against Trump on the spot? Is that something that because I think that was one of the aspects of Biden's fairly solid showing. Biden was solid. He was okay. But he didn't spend a whole lot of time. He didn't waste a whole lot of time fact checking the president. Now he did at many intervals say, hey, you know what? That's a lie. That's just totally untrue. That's not right. And then at one point he called him a clown. Which I thought was mild. Right. I thought that was mild.
Worst president in history.
Worst president in history, exactly. So, and to me, that's just fact. But he didn't engage in a whole lot of that. I mean, is fact checking? I want to get your sense on this, David. Is fact checking really all that effective against a president who is a habitual, pathological, serial liar and is very comfortable being that way?
Well, the fact checking would only have had any worth to the people who were on the margins, and at this late we're going after. You know, Trump's base, they're going to believe whatever he says, regardless
Yeah.
of the truth. And then the people who are on the ideological spectrum that you and I are on, we you know, we're informed enough to know when he's not telling the truth. It's that low information voter who's still undecided. Which, if you watched last night, I can't imagine how you could still be undecided. But those are the people that a fact checker would have been beneficial for.
We're talking with David Seaton. You can catch him on Twitter at David A. Seaton on Twitter.com. He's also a host of the Buchanan and Seaton Show on WVON Radio in Chicago. He's joining us by phone from Chicago. We're just unpacking what happened last night. And I thought David would be perfect for this exercise, this post-debate analysis, and you know, to kind of get a sense of exactly what happened last night, to get his thoughts on it. David, I know we're talking about Trump's performance, but what about Biden? Like, how did you think he performed?
Again, I was very, and I was watching Twitter. I was commenting in a couple of conversations on Facebook, and I saw a lot of people who were disappointed in Joe Biden. You know, there was even comments about, you know, he was coming across as weak and that he should have been more engaging with Trump. But at the end of the day, I think the way he played it in the debate last night was appropriate. If he had been if he didn't say anything, or if he had not commented as much as he had, then everyone would have said that he was weak. If he would have gone overboard and engaged Trump, and that's what Trump was trying to do. He was trying to suck him in and try to get into this, you know, non sequitur exchange that had nothing to do with the debate. If he had done that, then everyone would have said, "Oh yeah, he fell for the bait." So he played it down the middle. The most effective thing that he did, and from what I observed, is that when on his tangents, and when Trump either wouldn't answer a question, or he tried to deflect or distract from when Biden was answering a question, he looked right in the camera and talked directly to the American people, and he answered that question looking directly into the camera. Trump never looked into the camera. The entire time, he was just bouncing back and forth between Biden and Chris Wallace. The other really important thing, and I know this was something that I wrote about on my blog on Seaton Speaks at the last debate between Joe Biden and Bernie Sanders during the Democratic primary that played to Biden's favor, is that you didn't have that hooping, hollering live audience. That you could tell Trump was out of his element, that he had to have a one-on-one conversation, albeit in that debate format. He thrives off of that energy, and you know, if there was a live audience there, every time he said something, you know, there was you know, trying to jab at Trump. Jab at Biden. You know, he would have had all the Trump supporters, you know, clapping and yelling in the audience, and not having that really allowed you to focus in on the fact that, like I said, he was unprepared.
Yeah. No, I hear you on that. Actually, we're kind of on the same wavelength about this. What about that town hall that's coming up? So, I mean, that might play to Trump's strengths, you know, because then you'll have a live audience that they'll have to interface and interact with. But there's some strengths that Biden has with that kind of town hall format as well.
Well, it's going to be very similar to the same type of town hall that Donald Trump did, where the African American woman in the audience, you know, was speaking, and then he anticipated the end of the question, and she cut him off and said, "Let me finish," you know. And so it's not going to be, you know, that traditional 1,000 people in the audience, like I said, hooping and hollering, just because of the social distancing they're going to have to do regarding COVID-19. But again, to your point, that's going to be the format where Joe Biden is going to be able to thrive. I predict, I don't think that Donald Trump is going to go through with all three of the debates, especially if this second one goes as badly as the first one did.
Right. Now, okay, so you could make the argument, however, that Trump was successful. This is exactly what he wanted to do. He wanted to go on the attack. He wanted to look strong for his base. That this is not really so much about trying to, it's not a game of addition with Trump. It's really a game of just working with what he's got, strengthening or bolstering what he's already got. This is a battle of the bases. And I'm wondering last night, because there were a few moments where I feel like Biden has to be careful of this if he's going to go forward, if he's going to move forward with the next two debates, even as he's out on the campaign trail, because there were moments where I think that Trump may have exploited divisions between the Biden camp and between progressives, and so he has to watch it with these answers about, like how badly or how well he beat Bernie, or oh no, I'm not for, he has to kind of figure out a way to say it in a much more softer way, that he's not for defunding the police. I mean, I get it. So I get it in terms of defund the police. It's a messaging. I've always said that, and you said this as well, David. I thought that was a great messaging mistake. I think you definitely need to fundamentally overhaul it, restructure, whatever. But I mean, he's got to be careful with that. There was also that answer, the response on the Green New Deal. Those are some talking points, and you have progressives out there who are looking for an excuse not to support Biden, not to vote for Biden, and he has to be careful with that. So I think that Trump found a few moments where he exploited those divisions between Biden and progressives.
I think only for the individuals who are on the far left. I think that Trump has done enough damage, and with the death of Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, I think that most progressives know that the stakes are too high to allow Trump to manipulate our side, the Democrats, on these kind of fringe issues. Which is why I'm glad, when Trump tried to push him about packing the court, he didn't take the bait. He said, "Hey, I'm not going to answer that question because that's not the issue," and he pivoted off of that. Because there is some distance right now between Biden's buy-in to expanding the number of justices on the Supreme Court, and from the core progressive part of the Democratic Party. So again, the best thing that I liked of what he did is that he didn't allow Trump to take over the debate and then dictate the terms. Trump tried to do that anyway when he was trying to get him to say law and order. He said, "Oh, well, you're not going to say law and order," and then when he finally did say law and order, he said, "Oh, you just lost the left." The thing that you have to remember in this election is that Donald
Trump
make
up your mind here. Like make up your mind. Like, what sort of caricature do you want Joe Biden to be? Do you want him to be tough on crime, or do you want him to be somewhat soft on crime? That's the other thing too. I'm still not feeling like the Biden campaign, either Joe Biden or Kamala Harris, but this is more on Joe Biden because he was the one who pushed this at the time. He was the one that half authored it, the 1994 crime bill. And I knew Trump was going to bring that up. It's a contradiction. I mean, it's pure hypocrisy because on one hand, he's saying, "Oh, you're the one who helped pass the 94 crime bill. And this was tough on black communities. This put a lot of black folks in jail." But on the other, in the same breath, he's saying, "Oh, I've got thousands of endorsements from sheriffs, from police chiefs, from police unions. I'm tough on crime. I'm Mr. Law and Order." It's like, wait, make up your mind. Like, which is it? But I still think that Biden needs to come up with a better, more effective answer regarding the distortions and frankly, a lot of mythology surrounding the 94 crime bill. People have not accurately unpacked exactly what that bill was. It wasn't all good. What isn't all bad either. And so it didn't do what a lot of people are saying it did. And Biden has to be like straight up because there's a big chunk of the black electorate that's still not satisfied with the responses that he's giving on that. And Trump knows it.
Again, if you go back and you look at the votes that passed that crime bill, it was around 62 or 63 votes in the Senate. It was a majority. It was 200 votes in the House. So there were Republicans and Democrats who voted for that bill. And when we discussed this on our show here in Chicago, I've had to remind several callers that, hey, remember, Joe Biden, when he was a senator, he was one of 100 senators. So whatever his involvement was in that bill, he didn't pass it by himself. So if you can't hang that
and Bernie Sanders voted for the same bill.
Exactly. Bernie Sanders voted for that bill also. We have to, and again, we don't remember. A lot of people like to criticize that bill in hindsight, but at the time, We had the crack epidemic going on in the inner cities. We had Waco that had just happened. There were a lot of things going on that gave that bill momentum to get passed. So again, I think that the best thing that Joe Biden can do, and that's what he's done. He said, hey, he's admitted he's taken that mea culpa for his involvement in that bill, and said, hey, I've had some distance from it. I have some more wisdom. Now I have a better perspective, and this is how we can proceed going forward. But I wouldn't let Donald Trump keep me mired, or he shouldn't let Donald Trump keep him mired in something that passed over 30 years ago.
Right, right. Tell me something, David. I got you for about several more minutes. That moment where Trump is being asked to condemn white supremacists, and then he says, like, stand back, stand by. Like, what is that, an activation
stand back
code?
And stand by.
Like, I mean, I wasn't surprised by it. I know there were a lot of people who were, I mean, across the board, we were all offended. But it's like, okay, well, this is classic President Trump. Whomever likes him, he's going to like them back. He's going to give them love back. I mean, that's the way he's viewing it. I mean, plus he's just, people are trying to rationalize it, they're trying to figure out exactly what's going on with him and why he fails to condemn white supremacists. Well, he's like a master white supremacist, racist himself, especially if you look at his business dealings in New York City throughout the years when he was a businessman. I mean, he's partly built his so-called business empire off of all sorts of racist decisions. So, and the mistreatment of black tenants, for example. So, but I want to get your take on that. I mean, is that a significant moment? Is that a very significant moment where even, because I think Kenosha, Wisconsin has been that significant moment. Kyle Rittenhouse shooting 3 people, 2 in cold blood, moments after the murder, police just driving by him while he's armed. I think that was a pivotal moment for a lot of white voters. I think that was that, like, 3 civil rights workers killed in Philadelphia, Mississippi moment for a lot of white people. Because, I think that makes them feel very uncomfortable. Unarmed, off the cuff, white nationalists, poor working class. I mean, if there's one thing average middle class white people can't stand, it's armed, uneducated, working class white people. Because they're just unpredictable. And I think that last night that reminded them of that.
To me, the most powerful statement that Biden made last night was during the COVID conversation when he said to Trump, "It is what it is because you are who you are." To me, that was the most powerful statement that he made during the entire debate. And we had this conversation on our show 2 weeks ago when we were talking about Trump and him being a racist and the dog whistles and the things that he does. But the problem with concentrating on that is that there are enough white people out there who are racist that when we call him a racist, that reinforce. They say, oh now I remember. That's why I like Trump, because he and I are like-minded. So there are enough white people out there who are racist who like him because of that, and there are enough people out there who are indifferent to racism and will tell themselves, as long as I get my tax cuts and as long as the stock market is doing well, I don't care. So I think the far more powerful message that we have, especially going into this final 6 weeks before the election, is to concentrate on the failures of Donald Trump. Between 200,000+ people who have died from COVID, and we're only 4% of the world's population, but 20% of the deaths. We've still got 30 million people who are unemployed and are receiving unemployment. We've got 90% of restaurants and businesses are closed.
But let me ask you, and I hear all that, right? I mean, all the red alert indicators are going off, but and we're definitely by no means better off now than we were 4 years ago. But I mean, how does Biden still get his message through? How do we understand? Okay, well, this is also what we're voting for, and I'm not sure. I mean, it still feels like, as much as we talk about how much of a hot mess, a dumpster fire state that the nation is in, we're still talking about Trump. He's still getting free airtime. He's still going to get that $3-4 billion worth of free airtime, where all we're talking about is Trump, Trump, Trump. And we're not talking about Biden. It was the same thing with Hillary Clinton. No one really knew what they were voting for. So I wonder about that.
Ordinarily, I would agree with you, but when you look at the data, Donald Trump is polling only 4% plus with white men, and he's polling negative almost double digits with white women. So you're looking at a 25-30% swing from 2016 to this election cycle, and the fact that Joe Biden has been able to penetrate the white vote, especially the suburban white women and the college-educated white people in general, and that he can capture those margins, and then we know he's already getting 78% of the black vote and 62 to 65% of the Latino vote. That's all he needs. He doesn't need to go out there and convince everybody. Because Trump won on the margins, he won on the slimmest of margins in 3 states. I mean, the polling that came out in the last 48 hours is that Biden is competitive in Ohio, Iowa, Georgia, and Texas.
Yeah.
So we're looking at a completely different electorate in 2020, and we have to remember Joe Biden is not Hillary Clinton.
Do you think, David, that Trump is underestimating how tired people are? I honestly, I really feel like a lot of folks, I mean, at least a lot of my just family members, people who don't follow politics like I do, texting with them while the debate was going on, after about 30 minutes or so, they were like, they admitted, they tapped out. They're just like, okay, I know what this is about. I don't feel like watching this. I really feel like, I think he's underestimating how fatigued people want to see something presidential. They just want to know some guidance. People are dying. And then they got the president acting like a damn fool. And I think that he's overestimating that. I think at this, I think the drama is worn out. I think the welcome of that is worn out. Maybe it was a really novel shtick 4 years ago, and it had like a certain flair to it that drew people in, a certain magnetism about it. It's exhausting. It's even exhausting for me, someone who follows politics on the regular. Yeah, and I think people tapped out. What do you think?
Donald Trump is definitely a one-trick pony, and the fatigue that we were experiencing at the end of 2 terms of Bush, Trump has managed to put 2 terms of exhaustion into his first 3.5 years. I agree with you. I think he's definitely underestimating it, and he's in the bubble. He has purposely removed anyone from his inner circle who would push against his worldview and give him different information. So he's in even more of a bubble than a president would ordinarily be, because he's removed anyone who is perceived as anti-Trump or never Trumper or whatever. So yeah, he's not going to. But again, he let everybody know last night at the debate again that hey, his plan is not to win at the ballot box. His plan is to get this new woman Amy on the Supreme Court and take this to the Supreme Court. That's his plan to stay in office, because he knows that on January 20th, if he is not president, that SDNY is going to be waiting on him with handcuffs as soon as he walks off the dais.
Wow. We're talking with David Seaton, host of the Buchanan and Seaton Show on WVON Radio in Chicago. Go to WVON.com for more information there. Also to listen to Buchanan and Seaton Show, which is typically on Fridays, right? You guys are Fridays. What time?
Friday night, 9 p.m. to midnight Central Standard Time.
Yeah, Central, right, Central Time. And so Central Time is about an hour behind Eastern Time, our time. So check them out. Very smart show, very smart brothers, in fact. And that's why I brought on David Seaton, because he's one of the smartest folks out there that I know, and always giving me some things to think about, some food for thought. David, really appreciate your time. Always. We got to bring you back on more often. So looking forward to talking with you once again.
Thank you, man. Have a great day.
All right, you do the same. Let's take a break. We're going to take a break, and so bear with me and as I rub some of this cold out of my eyes, right? So we have Lisa Rhodes is going to be coming up next. She's chair of the Pennsylvania Democrats Black Caucus. She's going to do a bit of debate recap. We're also going to talk about Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania is gearing up to be the ultimate battleground state. There are a lot of eyes on Pennsylvania. Of course, the president had some choice words, some fairly demeaning words to say about Philadelphia. A lot of Philadelphia folks not so pleased about that. But there was a little bit of talk about Pennsylvania. So it goes to show you how much Republicans, particularly Trump's campaign, is worried about Pennsylvania, or how much they feel like there's an opportunity to throw people off in Pennsylvania. So we're going to talk with Lisa Rhodes next, coming up here on Reality Check 96.1 FM, 900 AM. WordRadio.com, Word TV, Word app. Let's take a break and we'll be right back.
Former Vice President Joe Biden.
We have to let people know we're listening, that we not only understand their struggle, but they understand the fact they deserve to be treated with dignity.
Senator Kamala Harris.
Part of the point of freedom is to be free from brutality, from injustice, from racism, and all of its manifestations.
But they're not getting a chance now.
Joe Biden and Kamala Harris have a real plan for police reform.
It means creating a national standard on use of force and conditioning federal funds for police departments on adoption of that standard. It's about giving the United States Department of Justice the subpoena power to investigate systemic police misconduct.
And that's what we're going to do. We're going to change that. I really mean it. I believe with every fiber in my being, we have such an opportunity now to change people's lives for the better. I'm Joe Biden, candidate for president, and I approve this message.
Paid for by Biden for president.
No fear, just facts. WURD.
During these unprecedented times, we're creating a lot of extra trash, and that means delays across the city with curbside collection. That's why we have some simple tips that will help you to reduce curbside waste and collection delays. Reduce food waste by using garbage disposals or composting, and limit bulk waste to 2 items per household. Set out trash properly. That means using sturdy trash bags and covering containers with lids. Make sure your trash bags are not heavier than 40 pounds. Set out trash no earlier than 7 p.m. before your collection day and 7 a.m. the day of collection. And remember, you can drop off materials at sanitation convenience centers 7 days a week from 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. Last and most importantly, thank our sanitation workers for their hard work during these challenging times. We all have a role to play to curb our waste and help our city. Learn more at philadelphiastreets.com.
The Word Radio newsletter, keeping you informed, engaged, and connected. Sign up by visiting wordradio.com. Scroll to the bottom of the page and type your email address under Connect with Us. You'll receive the latest information on Word Radio, messages from our president and CEO, Sarah Lomax Reese, exclusive articles and multimedia content, and resources. Stay informed with the Word Radio newsletter. Reality Check with Charles Ellison right now on Word Radio and wordradio.com.
Yeah, we're waiting on Lisa Rhodes. She is chair of the Pennsylvania Democrats Black Caucus, so she is scheduled to be on with us in short order. We don't have her on yet, so we'll just wait on her. I'm going to go ahead and go to, there are some comments, people commenting on what happened last night on Facebook Live. Go to facebook.com/4word, facebook.com/4word, and you can watch me now on Word TV. So quite a few comments there from folks. I just want to say good morning to some people too. Lois Rubin Marks, good morning to you. Shawnee Jones is saying all true, and Lois Rubin Marks saying so true, and so true about what happened last night. Just not a good night, and if you're one of those types that are out there, I know that there's some folks, particularly within my space, who felt it was entertaining. It wasn't entertaining. It's like I said, it was exhausting even for me, someone who's been in politics as long as I've been, who's seen a lot, who's worked with a variety of candidates, a variety of elected officials, public officials, and and I definitely have a love for the work that I do, have a love for the space. I mean, I have sort of a love-hate relationship because I do cringe at, and I sometimes get nauseated by some of the, the things that take place and some of the decisions that are made. But it was exhausting for me to watch it last night. I was even watching, I had my dog like sitting down at my feet, and the dog just kind of rolled over. I've never seen the dog and the dog always is like there with me as I'm watching something like these debates. I've never seen the dog roll over during a presidential debate, and she did it. She just rolled over. She's like, all right, enough of this. Good night, fam. So my dog was just every last one of us last night, and it wasn't thrilling to watch. It wasn't something where I got a bowl of popcorn and like, ooh, look at that. Ooh, do you see what he told him? It wasn't fun. It just was not fun. In fact, it was alarming. It's alarming to see this, as David said earlier, this pugnacious, sophomoric, childish person who is a bona fide right now is the official commander-in-chief, and he's a person who has access to the most powerful nuclear arsenal on the planet. You know, we tend to forget that, right? Has his fingertips on, has command over still the most powerful military on the planet. And he was acting like that. You know, it's just, and he didn't let up. I mean, he just completely embraced it. So, of course, we sort of expected that, but I think that there were some people out there who were hoping, well, it wasn't me because I was just expecting that that was going to happen. But I really do wish I had something else to watch last night other than that. I cannot even tell you, I'll be honest with you on this. I can't even tell you, I can't remember what the president said last night. I can't even remember what he said. I mean, I can remember different points where, and I think that that speaks to some of the effectiveness of Joe Biden's performance last night. And I'm not saying this in any sort of partisan way. I'm not saying this because, you know, I have been telling people for months now, yo, you need to vote for Joe Biden. Like, you know, enough of this, I'm undecided, I'm going to hold my vote hostage, no vote crap. Like, you need to just vote for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. You need to do it. Like, this is people need to get their game face on now. You know, I saw one brother who, you know, some advocate who was saying, oh, you know, we could have had Bernie. Well, you know, you didn't get Bernie, okay? And Bernie had like ample chance. He had 4 whole years. Had 4 whole years since 2016, since, you know, that disappointment for him to get his act together and to rally up enough support where he could have won the Democratic nomination. And he didn't, all right? So everyone needs to just get over that and, you know, get their game face on because we can't afford to do otherwise. We really can't, especially if you were watching what transpired. Even if you watch for the first 15, 20 minutes and then tuned out and said, hey, yo, you know what? I'm just going to go ahead and watch like a rerun of, you know, like I'm going to go to HBO on demand and watch Lovecraft Country or something else. Or there's got to be something better than this that's on, right? You know, you're like, do I really want people? It prompted a lot of people, particularly those who keep like perpetrating or keep you know, you know, sort of claiming that they're undecided. It did trigger, I'm wagering, a lot of people out there to ask, you know, do we really want another 4 years of this? Do we want this? And no, of course not. And so let me put the phone number out because I'm not sure what happened to Lisa Rhodes. 215-634-8065, toll free 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. 215-634-8065, toll free 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. We were scheduled to have Lisa Rhodes on, but I'm not sure what happened. Was really looking forward to talking to the Pennsylvania Dems, particularly the head of the Black Caucus. So, and Democrats, don't take it for granted now. Don't take it for granted. Democratic Party, particularly in Pennsylvania, don't take it for granted now just because we saw that performance last night, or, you know, the president didn't outright condemn white supremacists, that everything is all peachy keen. You got everything locked. As far as the black vote. I mean, I saw some very alarming numbers last week coming out of our friends in D.C. Tendency, 19%, has had an average about 19% of black voters polled responding to that poll saying that they would vote for Trump. And still an alarming number of black voters saying just this insane, ridiculous notion of not voting, which is just utterly it is mind-blowing and disgusting and disrespectful on some levels. But there are folks out there like that. And so in Pennsylvania, notice Pennsylvania came up during this debate, Philadelphia in particular. People need to get their game face on, get out and vote. They just opened up 17 early voting satellite locations throughout Philadelphia. So city commissioner's office now making a big effort because, you know, everyone asked for it. We asked for it. You asked for open polling locations. People need to get out and vote. They need to turn out. This is what you wanted. You wanted, you know, ample access to the polls. You know, there are people out there who have problems with mail-in ballot. You got 17 early satellite locations. Use them. Take advantage of them. Leverage them. Maximum turnout. I'm not talking about 50, 60%. I want to see 80, 90% turnout. That's the kind of election that this is. Anyway, we finally did get Lisa Rhodes. That's good. Chair of the Pennsylvania Democrats Black Caucus. Lisa, how are you doing? We got you for about 5 minutes or so. How's everything?
Oh, Oh, good morning. How are you? I'm good, thank you.
All right. Good morning. Good morning. I know it's been a long night. It's been a long night for all of us. Want to get your first impressions and first thoughts of last night's debate. This definitely put Pennsylvania, especially Philly, on the center stage. The president has some fairly offensive words to say about Philly, but it also shows that Republicans are either worried or they're salivating at the prospect of playing some serious games, some serious voter suppression games in Pennsylvania. And how much does that concern you?
It concerns me a lot, but the thing that I took away from the debate is that Trump is scared. He's scared of Pennsylvania, and specifically Philadelphia, because if we win Philadelphia and win big, we win the state, really. So we need Allegheny County as well, but Philadelphia, Pennsylvania is the battleground, but Philadelphia is the deciding factor in this election for Pennsylvania. So it shows that he is intimidated and scared because they would have never thought that vote by mail would have been so successful.
Right. Right. And we saw signs that vote by mail is, what are you saying? What are you saying in terms of, Lisa, in terms of, and specifically because you're overseeing the Black Caucus for Pennsylvania Democrats, what are you seeing in terms of Black voter participation, in terms of the mail-in ballots, in terms of, early voting in some places? What are you saying in terms of, are you able to, are Pennsylvania Democrats tapping Black voters who were untapped in 2016? Because there was about like 400,000 of them untapped in 2016. I saw those numbers. So are we doing better in 2020?
Yes, there is a whole effort and drive going on right now to contact all of those untapped voters in Philadelphia. Specifically, I've been working with the campaign to do voter outreach to the African American community. And I know one of the things we talked about was that there's always been this, that African American males feel as though they have been left out. And so the campaign has something called Shop Talk that is geared specifically to African American males. And since we aren't gathering in barbershops, this is kind of to replace that intimate conversation to have about politics and what's going on with the Democratic Party and what they can expect, and the fact that that they're no longer going to take African Americans in general, but specifically males, for granted.
Do we feel like that's as the saying goes, as old folks used to say growing up, a dollar short, a day late as far as Black men is concerned. I've been warning people about that for several years now. I felt like there was this kind of knee-jerk reaction to a concerning number of Black men that voted for Donald Trump in 2016. But the vast majority of Black men voted for Hillary Clinton. And I think that built up a lot of resentment, and it made a lot of Black male voters or potential Black male voters feel alienated. There was a lot. It seemed like and there's nothing. It was great. We had this big focus on the Black women electorate, but you can't have a full Black vote if you're focused on mostly one half of it, and the other half you're salty because a small minority of them voted for Donald Trump. I mean, have we really reconciled that?
Well, that was the whole push. I think that they get it now. I know that the Democratic Party gets it now, because that is a conversation that has and continues to take place about not just focusing on African American women, but also focusing on African American men. I guess like you talked about the old folks, we all know that, women, Black women, would be able to say, listen to their sons, you want to go to that, to the post with me we take our whole family. And now the focus is that we need to make sure that we have both. Like, we need both. Like you said, it's the complete Black vote, not just the Black women. And so the focus, again, is on both male and female voters in the African American community.
I hope that catches up. How word are we about Republican attacks in Pennsylvania, Lisa? What's the latest word on that as far as mail ballots? Worries about whether or not this makes it or snakes its way to the Supreme Court. Have we seen enough participation with mail-in ballots that maybe, okay, well, this thing has gained so much momentum, maybe there's not a whole lot to worry about between now and November 3rd?
So here's the story. This is how you know that Pennsylvania is so critical in this election. It's because the Trump administration filed lawsuit after lawsuit after lawsuit to suppress the vote. And we've won all of the lawsuits thus far except for one very critical thing, which is if you're going to use the option of vote by mail, you must remember to place your ballot after it's completed. And let's not forget down ballot either, because we know we've been talking about and focusing mostly on the presidential election. But, we have senators at stake. We have Congress at stake. We have state reps, on the ballot. We have questions on the ballot. So I want to make sure people don't forget that when they check that box, because we no longer have straight ticket, selection, that they have to select each and every option to make sure their voice is completely heard, not just heard at the highest level. And so once they complete the ballot in blue or black ink, then place it inside the secrecy envelope. That's the key. We did not win when it came to the secrecy envelope, because if your ballot is not inside of the secrecy envelope, it won't count. So that's the simple thing to remember about that. Then once you place it inside the return envelope, the sealed ballot, seal the return envelope, and then don't forget to turn it around on the back and certify it by signing it. You print your name, sign your name, put the date, and so forth, so to make sure your ballot is complete. And now those folks who are worried about the mail system, again, I think I heard you say when I was coming on that we now have 7 satellite
17 satellite locations in Philly.
Well, it's going to be a total of 17, but as of day before yesterday, 7 have opened. But they're all right. So the 7 are strategically in North Philly, South Philly, Northeast. So there's one in every area. But 17 will be opening in total. But people can just fill it out and take it in right then. Or you can go in person and cast your vote early. That's what we're really telling people that they can do if they're worried about voter suppression. So, we have options now. We just need to make sure that our folks exercise their options to come out and vote early. And don't wait. And if I could just say this too, when we're talking about voter suppression, is that the date that they've given to complete the application for vote by mail is October 27th. We do not want to wait 1 week before the election to complete the online application.
Yeah.
That's like you saying it's I'm a chance it. You don't want to chance it. You don't want to have to wait to the last minute to call around and say, what do I do because my ballot hasn't arrived yet, and panic. Vote early, and that will, again, eliminate suppression. We have the ability now to eliminate suppression.
That's right. We've been talking with Lisa Rose. She is chair of the Pennsylvania Democrats Black Caucus here in Pennsylvania and Philly. She's been joining us by phone. Lisa, thanks for your time. Really appreciate it. Thanks for the effort.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for having me. Have a great day.
You do the same. Be in touch. Stay safe out there. All right. Let's take a break, and when we come back, just phone lines are open: 215-634-8065, 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. Let's take a break. We'll be right back.
Hey, Mama, you calling me for a change? You and Daddy all right?
We're fine. Can't your mama call and check on her babies and get a little advice?
You know you can. What do you need help with?
Well, despite COVID-19, I'm not letting anything stop your father and I from voting this year. But we're here in Pennsylvania. Should we go to our precinct as usual? What's the best way?
You mean I get to be Mama for a minute? All you have to do is go to aarp.org/election 2020.
That's my favorite site, and they have a lot of information about the pandemic.
You only text me the website 3 times. But they have all the reliable, up-to-date voting information for voters 50 plus in every state. Want me to text it to you?
Girl, I know. It's aarp.org/election 2020.
Well, me being your mama didn't last long.
That's 'cause I'll always be your mama.
Yes, ma'am.
Keystone First VIP Choice HMO SNP Dual Eligible Special Needs Plan has a 4 out of 5 star rating and is one of the highest rated Medicare plans in the region. Keystone First VIP Choice and you are better together. If you live in Philadelphia, Bucks, Chester, Montgomery, or Delaware County, and you have both Medicare and Medicaid, choose the Medicare plan that is working to help you get better care. Enjoy extra benefits at no cost to you with Keystone First VIP Choice. You get benefits like dental, vision, and transportation to and from your medical appointments. They also cover a fitness membership to a gym of your choice. $150 toward over-the-counter pharmacy items. There's no copay for doctor's visits. They offer a large provider network, a great prescription plan, dental coverage, and even eyeglasses. Plus, you don't have to wait for open enrollment. You can change your coverage every quarter. Keystone First VIP Choice. The name you trust, the service you deserve. Call Keystone First VIP Choice today at 1-877-686-1760 or visit KeystoneFirstVIPChoice.com. Support independent black media and join the Forward movement now at 215-425-7875 or visit wordradio.com.
To African Americans, what do you have to lose?
More than we could have ever imagined. Trump's policies make black people less safe, and his downplaying of coronavirus cost black lives. It's time to elect someone who cares about us. Joe Biden. Joe will fight racism and injustice everywhere. He'll expand Obamacare and rebuild our economy so it works for all of us. Request a ballot now. Make a plan to vote. Our lives depend on it.
Paid for by Ask Me People, which is responsible for the content of this ad. AskMePeople.org. Not authorized by any candidate or candidates committee.
Support for WURD comes from the Pennsylvania Horticultural Society. You see them every day, in your house, in your neighborhood. They have been with you your whole life, providing comfort, reducing stress, cleaning your water. The plants and gardens around us have enormous impact in our lives. At PHS, we know a seed is more than a plant. Gardening is more than a hobby. That's why PHS invites you to join with them. Plant with purpose. Build healthier communities. Grow together. Learn more at phsonline.org/together.
Reality Check with Charles Ellison right now on Word Radio and wordradio.com.
All right, welcome back. 215-634-8065. Toll free, it's 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. Phone lines are open. 215-634-8065. Toll free, 866-361-0900. Let me go to Ms. Madeline out of Overbrook, who's calling in for a Reality Check. Ms. Madeline?
Thank you so very much. Great program, man. You know what? I didn't hear this. And Kathy called me. Good thing that you had Alisa on. This was my question. Are there questions on the ballot? Because there was, in the 4 pieces that I read in the Tribune, there were 4 questions. And the one about the judges, and we would be losing our say on some part of that. If you don't want me to explain the whole thing, I won't. But this is the thing.
No, go ahead.
Are there any on that ballot? That's the question.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, go ahead. Go ahead. Talk about it. What are your thoughts on it?
My thoughts on it was that what has happened across the South is they have given up different voting in different categories because that's the way they started with you. And you know, everything that we had to fight for every line, every vote for any category. They wanted to do it, but we shouldn't have it. And if we allow in Pennsylvania this to start, and the way it goes is that they take congressional districts and they break them up, and then some get the vote for this and some get the vote for that.
Yeah.
So for them, they wind up with the most power, and I can imagine they would get the Supreme Court. We might get the Commonwealth Court. All of them are important, but you know the Supreme Court is the most important.
Right.
And so I'm sure we wouldn't get that. But
Yeah.
what I find amazing is the people with more education, it don't seem to upset them. I'm a GED from OIC and very proud of it because I read a whole lot all the time.
Right.
But that doesn't. But they got the education. Don't they understand that once you give them an inch, they'll take a mile.
Mm-hmm.
I know.
Yeah. No, I hear you, Ms. Madeline. It's and speaking of which too, because we were talking with Woody yesterday, and he constantly reminds us too about that education gap, and that education gap, particularly with respect to, are people understanding what's at stake here, people understanding what they're seeing on these ballots in terms of Philadelphia. You got three ballot questions, proposed charter changes that I'm not sure if people are aware of those ballot questions. So that's something that we need to think about. Ms. Madeline, let me let you go because I want to make sure I give equal time to some other folks. Thank you for those comments, though, and thank you for being concerned, and thank you for voting too. Let me go to Wonder out of Media, PA, who's calling in for a reality check. Wonder?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, I want to just thank you for your insight on all this stuff. And prior to this, I really appreciate it. And most of all, I appreciate your spirit. And I thank you for that.
Thank you. No, you're
I have
welcome.
one question.
Yes.
And it is, I heard it was a question that was proposed last night that he said, Trump, you supposed to, the best for black since Lincoln. And I never heard a response on that. Did you?
I haven't. I think people have just sort of laughed it off. Yeah, I mean, people have just said, no, he can't be serious. But I haven't heard anyone give a response to it. I think, there should be some kind of, if not a response, some sort of conversation around it, or maybe ask him, maybe drill him and see, okay, well, what do you mean by that? But it's just one of those many things. I think that it's so hard for Trump's opponents, his political opponents, for media, for everyone else to keep track of just so many of the different very outrageous, bizarre things that he says and that he tweets. I think it's just one of those things that folks haven't gotten around to. Even when they play the clip on that Joe Biden commercial here on WURD, he makes that statement, and you hear even the people who are around him, the black people who are around him, they're laughing. Because even they can't take him seriously. Even they know that this dude is a total buffoon, and the statement he just made is just total buffoonery.
Well, thank you for your time.
Okay, no, thank you. I appreciate you, Wonder. Appreciate those kind words, too, at the beginning. And appreciate you listening and calling, continue to listen in. So, yeah, just going real quick before we go into the 11 o'clock hour, just going to figures. There's some good comments. People stayed up last night, watched a bit of the debate, have comments on it. They want to chime in on that conversation. Herman Downing, well, it was Biden's first debate. The man is 68 years old, doesn't need to go to combat with a big orange Cheeto who's rambunctious, whose microphone needed to be cut off. Hillary won all three debates. It doesn't matter who wins the debate. We need to break all voting records to win. I appreciate that. Thank you. I totally agree with you, Herman. Yeah, people need to turn out. Charmaine Johnson, Trump's performance was not for the American people. His audience was for the dictators who do not have respect for their people or any sense of decorum. His performance was to show those that he has real allegiance to that baby dictator as well on his way to destroy the norms of America. I think I'm reading this correctly. He was sent here to weaken us. That I agree with you, Charmaine. He absolutely was. Phyllis Williams is saying here on Facebook Live, the so-called debate last night was a disgrace. Joe Biden was lucky to get it in his words, was lucky enough to get his words through Trump's rampage. Biden was calm. He was humble, especially when he spoke about his son. You're not the first one who said that, Phyllis. I talked to, from my wife to other folks who are parents, and there was a big, some people, like a lot of us, political insiders and prognosticators and pundits, we missed it. But there were a lot of parents. I think that was a moment that connected. It was a very human, emotional moment where Biden talked to his son for just a quick few seconds, because his son Hunter Biden has issues with addiction, with drug addiction, and he wanted to make sure that his son wasn't, because that's what Trump was doing last night. He wasn't just being mean, he was being manipulative. And Biden caught that, and he was a parent, he was a father, and that's what a parent would do. And he looked through, he's like, Hunter, it's okay, it's good. It's not your fault, right? So that Biden wouldn't be watching the TV and feel like he, relapse or something because he's watching Trump manipulate that conversation. Phyllis goes on, Joe Biden was able to call Trump a liar, a racist, the worst president America has had, a clown and Putin's puppet. And Eustace Harker, Trump acting racist, and this is Eustace Harker here, Trump acting racist and Biden going super liberal, looking for black votes, and saying Biden was being racist a little bit. I don't think he was. So I don't know what that means. Shalot Igman, as far as last night, I didn't see anything like that. Shalata C.A. Sankofa, good morning to you. Matum Niobe, I'm not sure where you're from. Imperialism is definitely in deep crisis. Is this the best the West has? Last night was an international embarrassment. Yeah, it was. Eggy Potter, the people that need to be reached are the non-voters. They want to see someone fighting for them. Biden can't just let Trump look bad. He needs to fight hard enough to mobilize the non-voters. It's a very good point from Eggy Potter here. Absolutely right. Patricia White, good morning to you. Phyllis Williams. Yeah, my dog was bored. I'm telling you, even the dog was bored. Normally the dog's not bored. We'll sit up there and watch these things with me, after being used to me for so many years. And the dog was like, I'm out. So, all right. And let me take a break. Let me see if I can get like a real quick power nap in between. So I was up all night. I was just watching, talking to folks and, just trying to figure out what the conversation would be like today, and very much appreciate people. I appreciate the people who listen into this program were watching as well, and I appreciate those comments on Facebook Live. I'll get to more of them. We have to take a break. In the 11 o'clock hour, we're going to be talking with J.T. Rohn, who's a professor of African American Studies and also founder of the Black Ecologies Initiative. So we're headed into an onWURD segment, and we're going to talk about environmental injustice, environmental justice, how to study that, and how to fight back against environmental racism. We're going to take a break here on Reality Check, 96.1 FM, 900 AM, WordRadio.com, Word TV, Word app. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Get your money straight. Get my money right. With Solomon Jones and Akbar Hassan. Fridays on Wake Up with Word. 7 a.m. till 10 a.m. Hosted by Solomon Jones. Exclusively on Word Radio. 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD. Streaming live on WordRadio.com and on the Word Radio app.
Have you heard about Penny? They make it easier than ever to get health coverage.
What if I'm self-employed?
Penny gets you covered.
Unemployed?
Penny gets you covered.
What about my family?
Penny gets them covered too.
But will this fit into my budget?
Penny can connect you to financial help to lower the cost.
Really? Where do I go?
Easy. Just go to PENNIE.com.
Listen to Laborers Live.
We created the weekend. We created the 40-hour work week. We just want enough to feed our family, be able to send our children to college, and let our next generation do better than we did.
To people that might have forgot how important unionism is in a country like the United States. People now infringing on our 8-hour workday, trying to work people more than 8 hours without overtime, trying to work people without benefits. In the long run, everybody's getting fat paycheck except the worker. So this is really a wake-up call for America.
The struggle is continuous. Tune in to Laborers Live every Friday from 4 to 5 p.m. Sponsored by LESIT, the Laborers Employers Cooperation Education Trust of the Laborers District Council of Philadelphia and vicinity.
Local 332, Sam Staten Jr. Business Manager. Local 57, Esteban Vera Business Manager. Local 135, Dan Woodall Jr. Business Manager. Local 413, James Harper Jr. Business Manager. The Laborers District Council, Ryan Boyer Business Manager, and Tony Staten, Executive Director of LESIT.
Hi, I'm Melanie DeBose. I'm a single mom and I run a nonprofit. I don't have a lot of free time, and the safety of my family and employees always comes first. That's why I'm voting by mail this year.
Whether you're a Pennsylvania senior, essential worker, or simply someone who needs more flexibility to vote within a challenging schedule, voting by mail allows you to make your voice heard at the ballot box on your schedule while protecting your family's health. You can turn your mailbox into a ballot box by simply visiting votespa.com on your computer or any mobile device to request your mail-in ballot. With November 3rd around the corner, it's more important than ever to request your mail-in ballot today.
This year, I'm voting by mail because it's safe and easy. Voting on my time while keeping my family and employees safe.
We're all in this together, and voting by mail gives you the power to make your voice heard. So sign up at votespa.com or return your mail-in ballot application to your county election office today. Paid for by Power Interfaith.
This is Word Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD Philadelphia. Black Talk Media. Reality Check with Charles Ellison right now on Word Radio and WordRadio.com.
All right, welcome back to Reality Check. Just waiting now on J.T. Rohn. J.T. Rohn is a professor. Oh, he is on. He's a professor of African and African American Studies at Arizona State University, the School for Social Transformation there. Also founder, head of the Black Ecologies Initiative. That's within Arizona State University's Institute for Humanities Research. So for more on them, you can go to ihr.asu.edu/black-ecologies. And it's a little bit longer. Just Google Black Ecologies. And actually, he worked on a project about a year ago with his colleague Justin Hosby, who they put together this study regarding Black ecologies and looking at the impact of climate change, of all these different climatic changes that the planet is going through, and how Black people, how the Black diaspora is on the front lines of that. So we invited J.T. Rohn to join us for an EcoWord session to talk about that, what his initiative is up to. Professor, how are you doing?
I'm really good and honored to be here. I appreciate the invitation to talk about this.
Excellent, excellent. No, I appreciate you making time for us. I know it's a little bit early out there in Arizona, so let's get to it. So you had co-authored a study, a briefing with your colleague Justin Hosby, who I think is in North Carolina, but you were looking at Black communities in the United States and the effects of climate crisis, of changes, of major climatic destructive events like hurricanes, like rising sea levels, sinking land, also pollution on Black communities. Talk about that research. Talk about what were some of the top takeaways from that research, and what prompted you to understand that Black people are, when we talk about the environment, we talk about climate change, this is very much a Black issue.
Right. This is very much a pressing thing for me personally. I'm from Pennsylvania, Virginia, born and raised. And that part of Virginia is original plantation Virginia, right, in the Tidewater. It's been the site of ongoing ecological devastation since at least the 17th century. And part of this work, we come to terms with that. Justin and I conceived of beginning this project around deep mapping Black ecology, because we want to change the conversation on the environment. I think so much that's emerged within the academy and in popular discussion flatten colonialism, slavery, and other forms of violence that really have gone along with and created the conditions for our current ecological crisis. And also, at the same time, we wanted to emphasize the ways that Black communities are not just passive victims of that there have been, in everyday practice, alternative environmental information and knowledges produced by Black communities around the diaspora. So that really, that desire to both highlight vulnerability and and how that builds on history, and to highlight Black possibility was the point of writing it for us.
When you say Black possibility, what do you mean by that? Like you're talking about, like in terms of how we as a community respond to these types of changes, to these types of calamities. To expound on Black possibilities.
Yeah, I think if anybody is going to survive climate catastrophe, I'll just go with a community that I know. It's Black communities in places like rural Tappahannock, Virginia. Those communities have been engaged in mutual aid, have been at the brink of environmental catastrophe for several generations at least, and have figured out how to survive and even in flashes to thrive. Now, how can we rethink systems around sustainability that really engage those genealogies of Black thought and Black practice, and that create the possibilities for a future after oil?
Okay, so that's very fascinating, because like what you just described, that's like a model. That's like a crisis response, right? A rapid response model for when these climate disasters hit. How are you, like, when you're, what are your thoughts, Professor, like when you're saying, okay, like you have your experiences when growing up in Virginia, being from that community, and I have family too from Virginia as well, and so, but not as close to coastal Virginia as you were, or you were located. But as you see things unfolding now, like out west, for example, these major fires, and it's not just in terms of the heat, the fires, but it's also in terms of the air pollution from those fires. That's a big problem. It's going to be very alarming for underserved, vulnerable, low-income Black communities out in places like California, for example. When you see hurricanes strike, do you feel like that's what's lacking here, is like that response model?
In terms of certain kinds of federal and other kinds of response, certainly. I mean, at the current moment, and I'm riffing off my colleague Justin Holsby, we're witnessing the Katrinification of America, right? Where multiple ecological disasters, multiple environmental catastrophes are overlapping with economic and social catastrophes and a political catastrophe. So I think I think both, yes, in the kind of direct responses to those instances of environmental degradation, we need to be modeling new systems out of the ordinary practices that have the indigenous and Black and other communities have been engaged in to survive those. And I think that I think that it takes some reimagining of who is an environmental expert. And I think I don't think that should be out of concert with science. We do need to know, like, where toxic wells are, where toxic dumping is happening, because that's real. As my colleague Danielle Purifoy in North Carolina has done really important work around, there are Eastern North Carolina, like Eastern Virginia, is a site of extractivism, where people come and violently take, and then also where they also dump toxic waste and other hazards. So I think, and I think Black people have been mobilized around all of this, right? As Danielle's work points out, North Carolina has been, Black communities in rural North Carolina have been at the forefront of trying to figure out how to disrupt that kind of violence.
Yeah, and I always feel like definitely we need to rethink some things and reimagine some things. Like, I think about like how 220 years ago we had an underground railroad, for example. We didn't have any resources or our ancestors didn't have any resources when they did that, when they constructed that or designed that undertaking to help Black folks, escape from, really dire, horrific circumstances, escape enslavement. And I feel like it's kind of like that moment is now, like, especially when you describe the Katrinification of America. That's a very eloquent yet like troubling kind of way to put it, because we are seeing like these multiple disasters happen all at once. And so I wonder, it's like ideal situation to me, for example, and I don't know if this is something that you looked at, is like, okay, well, if we have like I was talking to a congresswoman out of California representing parts of Southern California. She's like, hey, you know what? We've got a lot of low-income Black communities in my district, and they can't go anywhere. They just have to stay here. But imagine if we reimagine that. Imagine if they had an underground railroad to move, like, okay, well, hey, we can temporarily relocate you to the Midwest or to the Northeast. We got some folks kind of like how the Underground Railroad operated. And I don't know if that sense of urgency is there yet in a lot of our communities about understanding that this thing is here, and that there's a lot more calamity on the horizon as sea levels rise, and as as heat waves get more intense. People are going to be seeking different geographic locations. They're going to be seeking food and shelter and access to water. It's about to get very real.
And we already see that, yeah. I mean, we see that in the context of the North African migrations and the mass drowning of Africans fleeing from North Africa to try. I mean, these are Central America. I mean, many of the current refugee crises are also environmental in nature as well as political and economic. So I think we're already seeing that externally in relation to the country. And I think it's only going to, I mean, we saw the displacement that happened after Katrina, as Justin worked around. We've seen it in relation to Puerto Rico, as a colleague, Hilda Lloren, worked around. There's been, there are multiple already, multiple displacements of that nature already in motion at once, and that overlap, and people with multiple displacements. And that's contiguous from slavery. I mean, I think, part of why Justin and I have begun working together was to think about the historical and ongoing connections between the Upper South in Virginia and the Deep South in New Orleans. And in the 1860s, Richmond and New Orleans were the biggest markets, before the outbreak of the Civil War, the late antebellum period, and for opposite reasons, right? Enslaved peoples were sold from Richmond into New Orleans, an expanding market. But part of what drove that was the actual destruction of land in Virginia, right? By 1800, tobacco had ruined soils and caused mass deforestation, and that was never without its environmental impacts. I mean, you can read even slave owner narratives and slave narratives that suggest the ways that malaria, flies brought on boats from Barbados. I mean, all kinds of ecological disasters go back. And I think part of our work as doing these kind of deep mapping projects is to recover some of these histories and to activate them,
Yeah. Talk about that work too. I mean, it's a fascinating conversation. I feel like we're gonna have you back on like regularly, just talk about this and unpack it. The Black Ecologies Initiative and what that is, how that's operating there at Arizona State University. I know that you all are. I know it's been a bit difficult. It's been challenging for everyone to try to convene, but you have convened recently with a lot of your colleagues to discuss these issues. But I find that effort very fascinating. It definitely aligns with what we're trying to do here at WRD with our onWURD project. So talk about what's being planned for that. How's that operating? Is that a series of classes, courses, or is it like, are you anticipating more studies, more expansive studies in the future?
Yeah, we're definitely planning to expand more study. Justin and I are trying to continue the deep mapping project as part of this. And the deep mapping project is really, again, about triangulating, what we might consider hazards, low land, rising water, or pollution, sites of pollution and dumping, but triangulate those with things that take them beyond two-dimensional maps, engage with artists and with filmmakers and with dancers and other communities of folk that are also responding to try to open up certain and activate certain histories around environment and Black communities, and so that we can change the conversation. And part of that, I think, part of our deep mapping is to try to create work that is that expands beyond certain genres of academic writing. As we have it planned so far for a symposium in the spring, we want to invite filmmakers, again, a children's author, and other someone who can write a sermonette. Folks responding in different cultural, expressive cultural modes that are germane and organic to Black life to really activate these kinds of histories. That's our first iteration. I think the second iteration is really to do more with the deep mapping in our site. One of the things that we want to do that I have envisioned for Virginia is creating a series of maps and also markers that allow us to think about environmental catastrophe and slavery. So these are the ways so far that we've been thinking about. And also, I mean, we're trying to change the academic conversation. Although academic conversations do take a long time to really have impact in terms of policy quite often, we want to change that conversation by engaging in lots of conversations and really bringing on some of the people that are doing this work, especially junior black scholars and graduate students, to really get their work out and to support it. So that's some of what we're thinking: deeper study and increasing activation of those histories in real space and time.
Yeah. How do you feel, though, Professor, and once again, everyone, if you're just now tuning in, we're having an EcoWord segment with Professor J.T. Rohn. He's Professor of African-American Studies at the School for Social Transformation at Arizona State University. He's joined us by phone from Tempe, Arizona. He's also founder of the Black Ecologies Initiative at the university. So we're talking about the environment and Black people. I have so many questions for you. Talk about that diaspora piece, right? Because you talk about this, particularly in that study with your colleague Hosby. And what do you mean by diaspora? And you kind of hinted at that just a few moments ago, where you're talking about, hey, this is not something that's unique to the United States or Black populations in the United States. We're seeing this happen everywhere, and how important it is for us to have those cross-diaspora, cross-cultural conversations. I don't think we're doing that enough, like where we as Black Americans are talking more with folks in the Caribbean, folks on the African continent, Black folks in other places like in Europe, talking with them about their experiences with these changes, with these planetary changes, with these changes in environment, also how environment intersects with all these other issues like racism, namely. How do we facilitate that? How do we encourage more of that?
I think that's part of what we are trying to do with the Black Ecologies Initiative. I mean, at this point, we have been in dialogue with Hilda Lloren and other folks primarily through the African American Intellectual History Society's blog, Black Perspective. We run a Black Ecology series there, and part of what is emphasized, if you check out those pieces, and also some conversations that we've had, including Danielle Purefoy and John Mudillahan and others, that, once you start looking diasporically, you realize that Blackness and Black communities are marked across the planet as sites for violent extraction, and also for dumping toxic waste. In addition to being susceptible to climate change, right? Deforestation. So I think what I mean by extractivism is violent extractivism is a kind of notion that, that we can employ any kinds of hazardous mining or whatever in this community. We can just cut down all the trees. That's a global grammar for capital of Blackness becomes a global grammar for capital of where you can do these kinds of violent extractions and violent dumping. And I think, but also on the other side, what Hilda Lloren referred to in a conversation that we did at the Political Ecologies Network digitally the other day, are these moving means by which Black migrants and Black communities take other possibilities forward as well. And that's central to my work. I think about, in my first book project, I think about what it means that Black communities from places like Virginia, North Carolina, and South Carolina came and saw the city through the particular lenses that they did, environmentally and otherwise, and what that looked like in terms of how they translated their organic mutual aid and other formulas for surviving catastrophe into the city. So I think we have that dynamic, both again where the diaspora is a site of injury and violence, but also where the diaspora is a site of possibility and futures for alternative systems and alternative worlds, with a very robust sense of sustainability that includes humans and doesn't say, oh, well, out there is the trees or the whales that we need to save, but actually what we need to fix is how we respond to one another, how we engage with one another, what kind of infrastructures we build to support life or to disavow connection with certain other people. So I think that's what I think the necessity of the diaspora is in these conversations.
Yeah, no, I appreciate this. We're going to have you back. Professor J.T. Rohn is a professor of African American Studies at Arizona State University, also founder of the Black Ecologies Initiative there at Arizona State University Institute for Humanities Research. You can catch him at J.T. Rohn, R-O-A-N-E, on Twitter, on social media. I see he's engaged there, so I'm sure we'll have you back on because we can have more expanded discussions about this. Professor, really appreciate your time early this morning out there in Arizona. So let's connect once again soon.
Okay, thank you so much. I appreciate it, and I look forward.
Thank you, sir. Take care. All right, let's take a break, and when we come back, Dr. Megan Gall is the National Data Director for All Voting is Local. So we're going to look at the mail-in ballot request. They've broken down some data, and they're showing the racial disparities, very stark racial disparities of mail-in ballot requests in places like Philadelphia and throughout Pennsylvania. So we're going to talk a little bit about that and see what's going on here on Reality Check 96.1 FM, 900 AM, wordradio.com, Word TV, Word app. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
He knew. Donald Trump knew how deadly COVID was months ago, and he lied about it. Just listen.
Now it's turning out it's not just old people, Bob. Just today and yesterday, some startling facts came out. It's not just older young people, to plenty of young people.
Donald Trump knew as early as February just how deadly COVID was, before anyone even died, and he did nothing about it. His indifference cost tens of thousands of black lives.
It goes through air, Bob. You just breathe the air. That's how it's passed. It's also more deadly than even your strenuous flus.
Nearly 200,000 dead. 1 in 5 are black. This virus is literally killing us, and Trump did nothing to stop it.
Well, I think, Bob, really, to be honest with you, I wanted to always play it down. I still like playing it down because I don't want to create a panic.
Too late, Mr. President.
I'm Joe Biden, candidate for president, and I approve this message.
Paid for by Biden for president.
This is Word Radio, independent black media.
COVID-19 impacted a lot of things this year, including regular vaccination appointments. Vaccines help protect you and everyone around you, especially during flu season. Schedule an appointment with your healthcare provider today to make sure you and your children are vaccinated. Vaccines keep us safe, and they work. Skip the flu this year. Get your vaccination today. Let's stay protected together. For more information, visit health.pa.gov. Paid for with Pennsylvania taxpayer dollars.
Always Best Care is a great place to work.
Flexibility, leadership, purpose,
great benefits.
There's never a dull moment.
Diversity, inclusion, compasión.
We love our jobs. If you're looking for a great place to work, you can join our compassionate Team Green. You can apply online at teamgreenabc.com or call 267-909-9248.
Teamwork makes the dream work.
Livelihood, the new initiative from Word Radio, connecting Philadelphians to jobs, entrepreneurship opportunities, small business resources, and financial literacy. Visit WURDworks.com right now and take the next step in your professional journey. Livelihood is supported by the Nightland Fest's Local News Transformation Fund, Borealis Philanthropies Racial Equity and Journalism Fund, and the Solutions Journalism Network. Reality Check with Charles Ellison right now on Word Radio and wordradio.com.
All right, welcome back. We are back at it here on Reality Check on the home of Black Talk Media, WURD, 96.1 FM, 900 AM, inside Philly proper, inside the Delaware Valley. But going beyond that, listening to us throughout the nation, you can go to wordradio.com. Also Word TV on Facebook and YouTube as well, facebook.com/forward, youtube.com/onWURD. Also, don't forget to download your Word app on your smartphone and your tablet device as well, for those of you who just want to take us wherever you go, wherever around the nation and throughout the world. people listening to us throughout the world as well. I saw somebody from Indonesia yesterday listening, and so that was I like that. That was pretty cool. But we appreciate that. I'll get to some of those comments on Facebook Live real soon. Dr. Megan Gall is the National Data Director for All Voting is Local. Go to allvotingislocal.org. We've had conversations with them. I've done a few teletown halls as well for them, nonpartisan group. They've just been trying to encourage people to vote, making voting more accessible, but they also released a couple of tools recently that are tracking absentee and mail-in ballot requests for the 2020 general election, and they're looking very closely at Pennsylvania and Philadelphia. There's some rather troubling trends that they're seeing in those requests. There's some racial disparities. Dr. Gall is here to talk about that. Doctor, how are you doing?
Very good. How are you?
All right, good. What are these two tools? These so you've been able to track absentee and mail-in ballot requests. Describe how that's taking place.
So the Secretary of State releases these data for us, and we have harnessed them to track in real time, as closely as possible, the request rates for absentee ballots across the state. We did look at how different communities were using the absentee ballot requests, and although there's a gap statewide, the gap is most stark in Philadelphia. So when we created the PA map, we drilled down a little bit on Philadelphia to shine a little bit more light there.
Okay. What are we saying? What explains that gap, and what are some aspects of that gap that are concerning you?
Well, right now what we're seeing, when we first launched the tool, we had a 9% gap in absentee requests between predominantly white and predominantly black precincts. That is a huge gap. The gap is even larger for predominantly Latino precincts, which is 14%. Now, we updated those data. Like I said, we're trying to update as regularly as possible. We see those requests ticking upwards. We see people asking for the ballots. But that gap between predominantly white, black, and Latino precincts is not closing. It still stands at a 9% gap between white and Latino, white and black, and a 14% gap between white and Latino.
Which is interesting because Philly is technically a majority black city. I mean, a slightly majority black. So it has a very high percentage of black people within it. To see such low mail-in ballot participation compared to white voters in the city. What explains that? What do you think is determining that or driving that, Dr. Gall?
You know, there are a lot of reasons. Historical voter intimidation and suppression that makes some communities less likely to use these tools. But we are in a pandemic right now, and we believe that it is important for election administrators to reach out to all groups, do proactive reach out where the numbers are a little bit behind, and try to close those gaps. The data don't give us an exact reason, but...
Got it. Yeah. Do you feel like there is an effort from so what you're saying throughout Pennsylvania, what you're saying in some of these more diverse counties in the Commonwealth, are elections officials making an effort, you feel?
I don't know the answer to that. My colleague, Scott Seaborg, that you've had on, does have good answers to that. But what I can tell you is that we have seen this pattern before. It's why we had our eyes on it this time. We've seen this pattern in the 2020 primary, and we tried to talk about it. And so what I know is that from the primary to now, we haven't seen a big change in those patterns.
Okay, got it. Now, from what I'm hearing, because I know a lot of folks had, at least people, listeners who will call in and they would talk about mail over the past few months, there had been concerns about, because they're seeing things in the news, they're seeing the conversation and the language from the president. They do see games being played with mail-in ballots, and then there's a lot of uncertainty around a lot of uncertainty around certain legal actions that Republicans are taking in the Commonwealth. So Pennsylvania is like this big crucial battleground now nationwide, but there's a big fight, a big scrap over mail-in ballots. And so that is that kind of like that voter suppression, voter depression that you're talking about, Dr. Gall, that can, I guess there are a lot of black voters tend to be a lot more skeptical when they see issues like that. And so I've had like a lot of people who listen to this program, listening to Word, there was just a big call to open up on-site locations. Are we still hoping that, okay, just because we don't see more black mail-in ballot or absentee ballot requests, we'll certainly see more black voters at the polls when they're opening up satellite locations, or when on election day all those precincts are open throughout Philadelphia. They're going to have way more precincts, virtually all precincts open compared to how they did it on June 2nd.
Well, we do expect voters to utilize all the options in front of them, available to them. And for PA, that does mean the ballots and in-person voting. We are advocating for folks to get their ballots early. We saw a 10-day lag between the request date for the average black voter and the average white voter in the primary. So we're trying to encourage black voters to apply for their absentee ballot as soon as possible. Yeah. And if folks want to cast their vote in person, we support that. We encourage folks to vote in person, wear their mask, and follow all the local and federal rules for safety protocols. So we want all options open so that folks have the opportunity to pick and choose what works best for them.
Are you able to break this data down any further, Dr. Gall, by not just in terms of race, but also in terms of age and gender? Are we seeing any sort of trends or new sorts of developments by that way?
We have not examined gender, but we did. I recall I mentioned we said we saw the same patterns in the Pennsylvania primary. And in that analysis, we looked at low-income areas and areas with more young people. And we did see that those areas were also requesting and returning fewer ballots.
Okay, yeah. So even the young people, I can see like the low income, that's a problem, that's a particular challenge. But young people as well. Is there is there still that education gap? I mean, is there still people kind of confused as to exactly how this works? Can we understand that? Are we able to sort of determine or discern anything based on this data? That maybe people they're just still having trouble understanding how the mail-in ballot process works, and they'll show up at the polls instead.
We do not have any data that gives us insight into that, but we do encourage folks to visit votespa.com to get some of that information. And we are putting out advocacy and checklists that help guide voters. PA has a secrecy envelope that has to go into the mailing envelope, and they require signatures. And so we are really asking folks to find the checklist for voting by mail and make sure you follow it. And votespa.com can help with that.
Okay. We've been talking with Dr. Megan Gall. Dr. Megan Gall is National Data Director of All Voting is Local. Where are you also? So I'm assuming you're applying these tools, Dr. Gall, to other places, to other states, because I know All Voting is Local is operating in other states. Where else are you seeing this? Are you able to see this kind of trend unfolding elsewhere other than Pennsylvania, more particularly Philadelphia?
Yes, we really are. This is not isolated to Pennsylvania or Philadelphia. In Cuyahoga County, Ohio, where Cleveland is, we saw a 12% gap in between black and white neighborhoods requesting ballots, an 8% gap in return rate for those ballots. So even when we got these ballots in folks' hands, we had a gap in the return rate. Yeah. We've seen similar patterns in Georgia. We've seen similar patterns in in Wisconsin. And a lot of the problem here is that it requires a very specific data to understand these patterns.
Yeah.
And so not only are these some of the states that All Voting is Local focuses on, but these are the states and jurisdictions that are putting that data out. And we applaud the jurisdictions that are doing that. The jurisdictions that aren't mean that we can't know what's happening there. We can't sound the alarm, and we can't redirect resources.
Yeah. Definitely. We're going to have to do that. I'm talking with Dr. Megan Gall, National Data Director for All Voting is Local. Go to allvotingislocal.org to learn more about what they're doing, and also these tools where they're tracking absentee and mail-in ballot requests. Dr. Gall, thanks for this work. Really appreciate it. Appreciate you coming on this morning.
Thank you so much for your time.
All right. Take care. Once again, go to allvotingislocal.org. And announcement made yesterday, speaking of mail-in ballots, speaking of people starting to vote, or at least as far as Philadelphia is concerned, they announced the phased opening of 17 different satellite voting locations throughout the city of Philadelphia. Going back to Lisa Rose, Lisa is right. I believe 7 have already been activated and opened. So go to philadelphiavotes.com for more information on that. Call them if you're getting confused as to exactly where those locations are. 215, let me open up the phone lines. We have phone lines open between now and into the noon hour. 215-634-8065, toll free 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. 215-634-8065, toll free 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. So 7 locations have been opened. They're going to be opening these satellite locations on a rolling basis. The first 7 are at City Hall Room 140 in Center City at 1400 John F. Kennedy Boulevard. Also George Washington High School in far northeast Philly, 10175 Bustleton Avenue. That's open. The Leo Chorus Center on 1776 North Broad Street in North Philly, that's opened. And Roxborough High School, 6498 Ridge Avenue in Northwest Philly, is also a satellite voting location. Tilden Middle School, 6601 Elmwood Avenue in Southwest Philly, is open for voting business. And Julia de Burgos Elementary, 401 West Lehigh Avenue in Upper North Philly, is open. Overbrook Elementary School, 2032 North 62nd Street in West Philly, is another satellite election office. And once again, the hours of operation for satellite election offices where you can start voting now are as follows: 11:30 a.m. to 6:30 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and 9:30 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. These are 7 days a week. And, I know WURD listeners have requested something like this. I know a lot of people had a lot of reticence and trepidation surrounding mail-in ballots. Definitely wasn't going to stop them overall, but they have requested. There were, a lot of people were asking for, an opportunity to early vote, or the opening up of places where they could drop off their mail-in ballots, just to make sure that they're getting there, that the right people are receiving them. So there you got it. So you got those 7 locations, and then 10 satellite office locations will be opening up as staffing becomes available. This is according to the Philadelphia City Commissioners, philadelphiavotes.com for more information. So once again, phone lines are open, 215-634-8065, toll free 866-361-0900. Diane Fassett, who's watching us on WURD TV, was saying Letitia Allen, or her name's Letitia Allen, or I think she's speaking on behalf of Letitia Allen, just got our ballot in the mail, going to deliver ourselves. So that's good. That's good to hear. So that option is there. So we appreciate it. Oh no, I'm sorry. Diane Fassett was talking to Letitia Allen, who was saying Letitia Allen is in Boston. Take it to the polls. Don't fill out. This is what I did in Boston. They will ask you for the mail-in. So that, that option is also available there. So, people getting their mail-in ballots and either filling them out and early. And thank you, Letitia, for listening from Boston, Massachusetts. We appreciate that too. sending love to our folks up in Boston. So I appreciate you, and appreciate you sharing your experience. Just as long as you get that ballot in, right? So, and Pennsylvania, one of those 42 states right now that will track the ballot. They will confirm that the ballot has been received. So you can go online to votespa.com if you've already mailed your ballot. You've been wondering what happened to that. I did that about a couple of weeks ago. We'll go confirm it online at votespa.com. Let me take a break. When we come back, phone lines are open 215-634-8065, toll free 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. Let's take a break and we'll be right back with your phone calls.
Trump spends his time golfing, while COVID-19 hits the black community hard. It's not just wrong, it's immoral. We need Joe Biden. Joe takes COVID-19 seriously and understands the economic and health impact it's had on our community. Joe will listen to the medical experts, and he will protect Obamacare. Trump, he won't even wear a mask. Request a ballot now. Make a plan to vote. Our lives depend on it. Paid for by Ask Me People, which is responsible for the content of this ad. AskMePeople.org. Not authorized by any candidate or candidates committee.
Keeping you informed. As a community service, Word Radio and the Black Doctors COVID-19 Consortium wants to keep you informed about where you can get no-cost, barrier-free COVID-19 testing this week. Tuesday, September 29th, from noon till 5 p.m. at Sharon Baptist Church, 3955 Conshohocken Avenue. Thursday, October 1st, from 4 p.m. till 7 p.m. at New Covenant Church of Philadelphia, 7500 Germantown Avenue. And Saturday, October 3rd, from 10 a.m. till 2 p.m. at Mount Airy Church of God in Christ, 6401 Ogontz Avenue. Stay informed and stay well with Word Radio. 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD. Be heard. Want another way to join the conversation? Follow us on social media using the hashtag onWURD. Be heard. Stay connected to Word Radio. Independent Black Media. Solutions on Word. Hosted by Dwayne Royster and Amadi Braxton. Solutions on Word. Exploring solutions to national, state, and local issues through the lens of race and gender. Solutions on Word. Fridays 5 p.m. till 7 p.m. Exclusively on Word Radio. 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD. Solutions is sponsored by Power Interfaith Movement, working towards life, liberty, and democracy for all. Word Radio presents the following wellness tip to support our listeners with mindfulness and motivation as we continue to navigate the pandemic together.
Hi, this is Halana, your resident health and wellness coach, with tips to help you stay well. Many of us have heard this term before, but may not know what it really means. Compassionate living brings mindfulness and peace to the center of your daily life. Compassionate living can look like this. Number 1, be gentle with yourself and those around you. Number 2, choose to speak kindly to others, even when you're upset. Number 3, become a good listener and practice empathy at home and at work. We sometimes think in order to live with compassion, we have to become someone else. Not so. In fact, allowing peacefulness to be at the center of our daily interactions is something we can practice every day. Go ahead and try it today. Stay well with Word. Happy living.
Stay well with Word. Connect with us at wordradio.com. Reality Check with Charles Ellison right now on Word Radio and wordradio.com.
All right. Yeah, we need those Halana tips in the world of politics, don't we? 215-634-8065. Toll free 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. 215-634-8065. Toll free 866-361-0900. Phone lines are open right now. And then we head into a citizen segment. We actually have a citizen segment coming up with Jen DeVore, The Real Truth About Voter Apathy. Jen DeVore is going to be joining us, contributor. This is her first column for the Citizen, for the Philadelphia Citizen, so looking forward to that. 215-634-8065, toll free 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. Let's go to Facebook Live, see what folks are saying there. And we were having Patricia White was saying, I'm sorry, before I go to Patricia White, Phyllis Williams was laughing about the fact my dog was bored. Yeah, she was. Nasir Butler. Good morning, Charles. What did you think about the host? Oh, Chris Wallace. Chris Wallace is me and Chris Wallace. Chris Wallace needed to take a little bit more control of his debate. He needed to raise his voice. Chris Wallace is quick to beat his chest and buck up on guests and folks quite regularly on Fox News Sunday, but he definitely seemed to be, he had a little bit of nervousness about him with respect to President Trump. And so I think he needed to, I don't think Chris Wallace put his foot down a little bit. Chris Wallace also using a lot of racial dog whistling, in terms of, trying to both sides, folks like Proud Boys and other white nationalist domestic terrorists who keep showing up at these different events and protests and showing up at places like Portland and Louisville and elsewhere, trying to both sides it, trying to compare them to Black Lives Matter protesters. So there was a bit of racial, Chris Wallace's racial dog whistle, albeit much more subtle, was kind of almost there on level with Donald Trump's. That was just my opinion with that. I've never been that much of a Chris Wallace fan, even though I do watch Fox News Sunday regularly, along with the other Sunday talk shows. It's a habit. Not my favorite show. Chris Wallace is obviously the least Fox Newsy of all the other Fox News personalities, but there were times where I guess he was trying to give, he was definitely trying to work for Biden to make sure that Biden got a word in edgewise. But if Trump hadn't been like that, Chris Wallace would have been even more off the chain. So actually, I think that Trump, in a way, helped Biden, sort of protected Biden from Chris Wallace, because Chris Wallace has the reputation for going for the jugular. And Chris Wallace also has to prove to his Fox News audience that he's loyal to it. He's been with Fox News for quite a long time. So I think that he definitely didn't get the opportunity to play this game of, because there's no both sides on this. I mean, if you're still both siding the debate or both siding this election, or saying, oh, I'm undecided because I can't, both of them, I heard some people commenting in focus groups like this focus group on CNN in Ohio. I think they were just both out of control. Like, what are you talking about? Like, were we watching the same debate? Like, you done made up your mind that you're just going to vote for Trump and you just don't want to tell anybody. But there's no both siding this. It really is not. It was just clearly, there was clear, stark contrast. Biden played off of that. It was, hey, this is what presidential looks like, versus look over there, that's unpresidential. That's up to you if you want 4 more years of that. So it's just as simple as that. And so I think that's where you found it to be quite beneficial and advantageous for Biden. It's a very good question this year. I appreciate that. Chris Wallace also forced to finally ask about climate change, because we had talked about that yesterday with Mark Hertzgaard of Covering Climate Now, noticing that Chris Wallace had not put climate crisis, we're calling it climate crisis now. We're trying to get out of the habit of calling it climate change because it's at crisis levels right now. Mark Hertzgaard was on here with us on Reality Check, was talking to us from Los Angeles, and they're still dealing with those fires out there, those wildfires and choking air. And Hertzgaard was like, it's unbelievable. They're not even bringing this up as a topic, but it did show up as a fairly prominent topic in last night's debate. They did have some back and forth and some exchange, Chris Wallace, but that was after a lot of pressure, probably from a lot of folks, particularly climate advocates and just normal average Americans who are dealing with, whether it's the wildfires, the hurricanes, or flooding, or whatever. And they're like, no, you got to ask about this. So I thought that was a bit significant. The fact that you had a Fox News Sunday host, a Fox News host being pushed, there's recognition that this is a significant issue amongst voters, amongst a lot of voters, and it's probably going to be a lot more prominent in the next set of elections, particularly the next midterms that come up, depending on what the outcome of this one is. So we'll see. But it was very interesting watching. I mean, just Chris Wallace being Chris Wallace. A lot of people were a little bit irked that he didn't ask about the taxes first, but Chris Wallace has a way of making you feel comfortable for a minute, and then he finds that opening to sneak in the more uncomfortable questions. But he wasn't. There were points where he could have been more aggressive with the president. He wasn't. Junior Lee, he admitted it. I stopped watching the debate and watched Coming to America. It was therapeutic. See, I mean, Junior Lee's one of our smart listeners. is on here quite a bit. Always love the insights and the information from Junior Lee. Even Junior Lee, yeah, it was exhausting. And I didn't want to watch it, but I watched it, so I watched it for y'all. Really, I did. I watched it for my Word fam. So, but I appreciate Junior Lee admitting it, because there's a lot of people tapped out. I don't think the ratings are going to be all that spectacular when we head into debates number 2 and 3 for Trump and Biden. I do feel like the debate next Wednesday between Vice President Mike Pence and Kamala Harris, a lot of people will be watching that. And that'll be a bit more substantive because Pence is obviously, Pence is, of course, a zealot. He's a political ideologue, but is a bit more, in terms of his personality, he's a lot more level-headed. So you're not going to have like him. Senator Harris definitely should be on her toes. She will be. And so but that should be an interesting and very fascinating debate. And I think people will definitely be watching that. But I think the other 2 debates between Trump and Biden, I don't think the viewership's going to be all that high. 215-634-8065, toll free 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. Patricia White also saying, hey, I think we as Black people need to boycott the next 2 debates. It has been so disappointing, and it's adding to the hurting of our mental health and our belief in government. It really, it is. That's the other crisis. There's a crisis of confidence, or a crisis, a crisis of confidence, or the lack thereof, right? And I've always talked about that here on Reality Check. You're not going to have all of this. You're not going to have things like the ability to listen to radio stations like Word, or to live in the kinds of communities that we live in, or to have some kind of semblance of stability without governance, without good governance. And we've seen the erosion of good governance over, especially it's been accelerating since the 70s. And, right after the Civil Rights Movement, none of this stuff is by coincidence. It's like, they felt like, oh, we gave the Black folks an inch, and we're not going to give them that mile. And so you see this very fast, quick deceleration of things. You see things rapidly changing, or society adapting while it was opening up and desegregating and integrating Black people, but making social mobility, making life much harder for us on a lot of levels. So it's like, okay, you want to participate in these things? So because some of these things, basic quality of life, indicators, or basic quality of life mechanisms were very easy, fairly easy to access for, average, even low income white people, or lower middle class, or low, those types of white people who are on modest income. I mean, even the whole concept of housing projects, right? I mean, that started off as something to accommodate white working class families. And so to help them, and, help them make a very comfortable, smooth transition into permanent home ownership. So now, projects, I mean, it's a pariah. It's there's so much stigma around it, and it's viewed as a very, very Black and very destructive thing. So, but, all those things, just as you particularly see it in the 70s, you particularly see it after, when Nixon left. And when President Nixon left in 1973, and we see things kind of going downhill there, it accelerates under Reagan. And we're seeing more of that acceleration happening now, particularly years later under Trump. So, there's all these different parallels, like college tuition, for example. You see this, I've always seen this. It's like as soon as college and university doors opened up for young Black people to, so they had more options, they had more places to go to other than historically Black colleges and universities, college tuition went up, like just spiked up. You see you see the Civil Rights Movement happening, the integration and all that, the segregation, okay, that's fine. You guys want to, join these institutions, you want to sign up, for this kind of life. We're going to make it very expensive. We're going to make it very uncomfortable for you. And so it's been like this slow kind of steady rise. And so, all of that, I don't know how I got off on that tangent, but all of that is connected. Phyllis Williams, sometimes we have to fight through our dislikes to become winners. You're absolutely right about that. Howard Harris says that the debate was great. Trump was his usual unethical self. Yeah, he was. And Biden did what he needed to do, and that was call him out with absolutely no respect. So I guess that's a very good, very simple way of putting it. Sometimes it's not that complicated. Good morning to you, Kimberly Ferris. Appreciate you. Casa Husera, rise and shine. Yeah, I do need some rise and shine. I got some coffee right here. In fact, Bombayo says that there's an invitation for all drummers to unite at Union Square tomorrow, October 1st at 5 p.m. So the theme is Drums Against Trump. We believe there is power behind the vibration of our drums. You are so correct with that, Bombayo. Appreciate you. And definitely maybe some will feel the power of that drum in Philly and beyond, because we definitely need as many drums as we can get. Yeah, Howard Harris is saying that, however, Biden was weak in one area, that was on police reform. His response was too elementary about what defund the police means and entails. His response was very poor. Fortunately, Biden can be shown the light in that matter. I agree with you on that. I think it could have been much stronger. I think that, I think they're playing it safe, or they feel like they're playing it safe, but actually playing it, they're making it much more risky in the way that they're addressing that issue. I guess they feel like, hey, and I was watching Kamala Harris on CNN last night in a conversation with Jake Tapper, and they seem to be very guarded with the answers. I guess that's the strategy. Like, hey, we only have, and she did emphasize that we only have 34 days left, and so we don't have a lot of time to be, or we don't want to be focused on things we have no control over now. We just want to get through this election. But I do feel like, the issue regarding police reform and this issue, I feel like there's an opportunity still for an unpacked conversation and an honest conversation about the 94 crime bill, just clear it up. I was having this conversation with someone in close proximity to the Biden campaign, and they were like, yeah, you know what, you're right, but they're just afraid. They don't want to get into it because, people just don't know. People aren't like really that educated about it, and people don't read beyond a hashtag and a headline. So I get that, but I think there's a very simple way to have that conversation, and they just refuse to have it. Maurice Waller's also saying the Biden-Harris ticket needs to come out stronger on law enforcement. They must state that they are most deaf down with law enforcement, as are most poor and middle-class Americans. However, there is a difference between having strong law enforcement and having a police state born of systemic racism. Biden-Harris must firmly state that they believe the police need to be reimagined. People still not totally satisfied with, feeling like the responses or just the messaging around that is a bit milquetoast. They just have to be a little bit more forceful, and people might be, willing to just be like, okay, I see what they're saying. It's not just, oh, I'm against defund the police. It's, hey, this is actually what I think. Well, then come up with the alternative message, craft it, and then go ahead and put it out there. And I think you'd be surprised by the number of people who'd be surprised by that. All right, let me take a break. When we come back on the other side, we're heading into a citizen segment. We got first-time citizens contributor Jen DeVore, who just wrote her column, The Real Truth About Voter Apathy. So we're going to talk about that coming up next in our citizen segment at 12 o'clock hour here on Reality Check 96.1 FM, 900 AM, wordradio.com, Word TV, Word app. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Don't miss the Electric Magazine Show, hosted by Cody Anderson and Vicky Leach. Saturday mornings from 7 a.m. till 9 a.m. Exclusively on Word Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD.
During these unprecedented times, we're creating a lot of extra trash, and that means delays across the city with curbside collection. That's why we have some simple tips that will help you to reduce curbside waste and collection delays. Reduce food waste by using garbage disposals or composting, and limit bulk waste to 2 items per household. Set out trash properly. That means using sturdy trash bags and covering containers with lids. Make sure your trash bags are not heavier than 40 pounds. Set out trash no earlier than 7 p.m. before your collection day and 7 a.m. the day of collection. And remember, you can drop off materials at sanitation convenience centers 7 days a week from 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. Last and most importantly, thank our sanitation workers for their hard work during these challenging times. We all have a role to play to curb our waste and help our city. Learn more at philadelphiastreets.com.
He's back.
This is Reverend Al Sharpton.
Keeping it real with the Reverend Al Sharpton.
In times like these, we have to stay connected.
At a brand new time, Monday through Thursday, 9 p.m. till midnight.
I'm excited that Keeping It Real returns to WURD.
Keeping it real with the Reverend Al Sharpton. Monday through Thursday, 9 p.m. till midnight. This program is pre-recorded. No phone calls, please.
Keep it locked to WURD 96.1 FM, 900 AM, WURDradio.com.
Dietz & Watson has been making premium meats and artisan cheeses for over 80 years. And when it comes to stacking sandwiches and party platters, they've got something for everyone in the family, like maple honey turkey breast, American cheese, buffalo chicken, and more. So get to your local deli and taste 4 generations of family recipes. With Dietz & Watson on the table, you'll have everyone coming back for seconds and thirds. Dietz & Watson, it's a family thing since 1939.
It's easier than ever to get the right health coverage for families of all sizes.
This is Bonnie, Ronnie, Tani, Johnny.
Penny gets you covered. Millennials, gig workers, virtual birthday partiers.
Grandma, you're on mute.
Penny gets you all covered. Penny helps you compare plans, get financial assistance, and purchase health insurance that fits your life. Get covered at PENNIE.com.
Lifting every voice till earth and heaven ring. This is Word Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD Philadelphia. Black Talk Media. Reality Check with Charles Ellison right now on Word Radio and WordRadio.com.
All right, welcome back to Reality Check, 96.1 FM, 900 AM, WordRadio.com, Word TV, Word app. We're heading to our weekly Citizen segment. We do it in conjunction with the Philadelphia Citizen, the PhiladelphiaCitizen.org. I've been very busy during election season, so I have not had a chance to do a Reality Check column in quite a long time, so that's just on hiatus at the moment. But stay tuned on that. But go, in the meantime, to the PhiladelphiaCitizen.org for some great content, great information, great publication overall at PhiladelphiaCitizen.org, and sometimes we bring on the contributors from the Citizen here on Reality Check. They provide us with their insights and talk about things that they're doing in the community. And we have now joining us Jen DeVore. She is co-founder of Better Civics. It is a nonpartisan nonprofit that's exploring and dedicated to revolutionizing civic engagement and voter participation. She talks about that with her other co-founder, Megan Smith, in this piece, this Philadelphia Citizen column entitled "The Real Truth About Voter Apathy." It's not that people don't care, the founders of a new civic engagement nonprofit contend. It's that our electoral system continuously puts up barriers to voting. Here's what we all can do about it. Jen joins us by phone. How are you doing?
Hi, I'm good. Thank you so much for having me on the show today.
All right, excellent. No, I appreciate your time. Appreciate this work too. I appreciate this comment. I see where you were headed with this. I am one of those politicos that also like is yelling at people daily, like, "Hey, come on, let's get to it." Like, yep. Got, this is that moment. We can't mess around with it. But you make some really good points. You and your colleague Megan Smith here, Jen, yep, make some very good points in this. You're saying that the most influential voting bloc is the non-voter. I've heard that before. One of our contributors earlier this week, Dr. G.S. Potter, said the exact same thing. We really need to look at these non-voters closely. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, well, I think if you look going back to the 2016 election, like so many of us are referring back to now, nearly 100 million eligible voters did not cast a vote. And we have to ask ourselves why. And I think often we use the term, it's voter apathy, people don't care, et cetera. But Megan and I, we talk a lot about this, and we think that term is oppressive. It blames the individual for not voting as opposed to placing the responsibility on institutions and government to explain the process and connect people to it. Voting is complicated. Why to vote is complicated. Understanding how it connects to your day-to-day, whether it's a federal, state, or municipal level. And so, our point with the article and our goal with our organization is to better explain the systems and processes and reconnect people to the process year round. So it's not just this race to the polls every 6 months.
Yeah, I agree with you, Juan. We really need to expand civic literacy. You give voter suppression a much more expansive definition. You're saying that the term voter apathy, quoting your piece here, it ignores 200 plus years of voter suppression. So typically when we think of voter suppression, we think of that systemic racism, those barriers that had been erected, especially since Black people have been enslaved in this country. And we think of, the time, going through Reconstruction and after Reconstruction through Jim Crow. We think of now, like, the voter purging, closure of polling precincts, et cetera, all these voter ID at one point, voter suppression games. But you say that, like, the term that there's voter suppression is also when there's just people lack information. Non-voters are also like low civic information voters too. They just need to get more information. You need to hold their hand and kind of walk them through it.
Yes, yeah. I mean, look at the ballot questions or the charter questions that we vote on, right? Like, they're written in an incredibly complicated way. And so if you're walking into the polls and not understanding what you're being asked, and frankly, sometimes those questions are written in a way by design that can be confusing. It's a disconnection. And it's not, and Megan and I make this very clear, like, it's not ever about dumbing things down or using layman terms. Like, we don't like that at all. It's just talking to people and having a conversation. Now, I ran for the office of city commissioner back in 2019, and so anecdotally, I saw that on the campaign trail, running for an office that so many people had never heard about before. There was a barrier of just explaining what this office is, how the people can hold it accountable, the power of increasing Philadelphia votes for the rest of the state, and how we are such a swing city for Pennsylvania. Once people were able to get that information, it clicked. And it was amazing to see, in person. And so we hope to continue that work.
Yeah, just before I had you on not too long ago on today's edition, we talked to the National Data Director of All Voting is Local, Dr. Megan Gall, and she was
sorry, someone else, sorry.
right. Oh, not Scott. We've had Scott on, and I've been working with
recently.
right. We've been working with All Voting is Local. I did moderate a few teletown halls and doing great work, and I believe in that work too. But she was saying how they had just developed tools that are able to show racial disparities in absentee ballot and mail-in ballot requests, and the disparities are quite stark. They're troubling. Higher percentage of white residents in Philadelphia requesting absentee mail-in ballots, lower percentages of Black and also Latino residents doing the same. And so, talk a little bit about that. Like, it's fascinating too, Jen, right? Where we live in a very, you can argue, high information time, a time where information or the ability to plug into information is rather ubiquitous. It's everywhere, right? So, but here we are where access to voting or learning more about voting or civic process is just more and more complicated. And so how do we reconcile that?
Yeah, well, I think, you see those disparities in numbers. I think there's a couple of different reasons. I mean, certainly given the, certainly there's a trust issue, right? There's so much information out there. Should we trust mail-in ballots? Should we trust our voting machines? Should we, are we going to be able to walk into the polls? And so there's a lot of misinformation out there and not a lot of information about what's accurate. And so that causes mistrust in a lot of communities. But I also think, too, given the response following COVID-19, so much of promotion of voting has been done digitally right now and online. And so to your point, that leaves a lot of people out. There's a huge digital divide in Philadelphia, and it's not just about access, but it's about tech savviness, knowing where to look for information, what networks you're plugged into. We're actually going to be working with All Voting is Local and a couple of other organizations like Unity in the Community over here in Breeze, where I live, to do an in-person voting event on October 11th at Smith Playground over by 25th and Snyder. It's going to be socially distanced. We're going to have masks. We're having vote safe kits. So if you are going to vote in person, you have pens and hand sanitizers. But we have to talk. We have to go to where the people are, right? We say that every single year. Go to where the people are. Talk to the people where they're at. And so we really need to make an even bigger, more intentional effort to do that now, given everything that's going on with the pandemic.
Yeah, yeah. You know what, Jen, I also find that there are a lot of non-voters out there who they have the information. They know what's at stake. They're very familiar with the political process. Sometimes I find that they're much more knowledgeable about it than even someone like myself who's been involved in the political space. And I didn't hail from journalism. I'm not a journalist. I'm just a political strategist by training and profession. But they just decide not to vote. And I always find that there's a chunk of the non-voting population out there which is just disenchanted, disgruntled, disillusioned by their own individual experiences within a particular political apparatus. They've decided, you know what, I don't want to be involved in this process anymore. Or it's just like with young people out there who are very smart about what's going on, but they still don't want to vote because I see it. There's a lack of opportunity. I see this especially in underserved communities or black communities. They just want that opportunity to be in some kind of role. Like, how do we carve out those roles? Because we see like all these different organizations, for example, like whether it's your organization or it's All Voting is Local, all these different civic engagement mobilization organizations, or like when we talk about the environment, which is a big, big deal.
Yeah.
And it affects black and brown populations disproportionately. They're on the front line of it, but it's widely viewed as like a white middle class discussion and mobilization activity. How do we resolve that? Like, how do we, like, I've always challenged like folks who come out with new initiatives or programs like elected officials, and they're like, oh, we want to get young people, but then they start a committee. There are no young people on the committee.
Yeah.
And I think that's also part. How do we resolve that, where we give people roles, leadership roles, where they're big players, major players in this thing called politics and this thing called campaigns and elections?
Yeah, well, I think, there's a couple of things there. I mean, people feel burned by the system. Like, we get it, right? Like, we're never mad at people that don't vote because there's a reason for that. And there's not a one-stop solution for everything. I mean, to address how do you kind of, talk with people who, like you said, are knowledgeable about the system, understand how it works, but still feel disconnected from it. I mean, often, a lot of times that I've personally seen successful is bringing it down to a more local, personal level. A story that I talk about in the article is, voting for state reps, right? You think, okay, well, that's in Harrisburg, and I'm worried about what's happening on my block right now, so how does that affect me? I only hear from my state rep when it's an election year. But, like, when I talk to my neighbors, back alley cleanouts are a big issue in Point Breeze, as they are among other places across the city. And our state reps can get funding to hire people from the neighborhood. This was a program that was a few years ago that can clean out the back alleys. And so when I tell my neighbors that say, well, I'm not going to vote for a state rep because they don't do anything for me, but you explain, like, no, here's actually how they can do something for you. Here's how you hold them accountable for it. And then these are the candidates that are running, and this is who's saying they're going to do this, then it brings it back to a personal level. Now, you can't, obviously that's one situation in one neighborhood with one small group of people, but I do think explaining the difference between a state senator and a state representative and, making sure that people, they might know a lot about politics, but like, how is government supposed to work for you? And then how do you get it to work for you? I mean, we're hiring people for a job. We pay their salaries. And that's, I think, how we should be looking at it. As far as getting young people engaged, I mean, I think, it's split, right? Because I hear what you're saying about young people that don't feel connected to the process. And we hear terms like Gen Z and millennials, and there's a lot of, it's not just an age demographic. There's a lot of socioeconomic, things that go on behind there too, depending on who's talking about it. But I think it is right. Like, you have to actually give people leadership and put them in positions. Like, poll working is an awesome example of how young people can jump in and participate in democracy. It can even be, it's a little bit of a power trip working at the polls on election day. I mean, I've done it before, it's, similar to being a block captain, you're
Right.
helping people, you're in charge of something very important. And so, we're also, working with the Voter Project to recruit poll workers. I know you had Pat Christmas from Committee of 70 on a few weeks ago, and they're doing phenomenal things with recruiting Philly youth votes. So I think it is actually, it's not just saying, it's doing and giving young people responsibility. I'm also on the advisory board of a national organization called Vote 16 USA, which is an effort to lower the voting age to 16. So we could probably have a whole other show about that, but that's something I'm very interested in.
I'm so happy you read my mind. And I wrote a while back, I wrote a column in the Philadelphia Citizen about just that, lowering the voting age to 16.
Yep.
A couple of years ago when I mentioned that, and I was pushing that here on this program, I got a lot of pushback, particularly from, a lot of our elders out there who were like, no, and I'm like, no, we need to do this. I'm like, that it would be a dramatic sea change in the way things are done, the way things are governed in a place like Philadelphia, particularly on issues like K through 12 education, on the state of the education system. I mean, and we've already seen this. You and I, we need to talk offline about this.
I love it. Yeah,
I'm a big proponent. I think Philly especially needs to do this. I've approached a couple of city council members like, are you guys going to submit a bill to try to lower the voting age? And I get mum on it. It's like, well, I don't know, it sounds great, and I'm like, Philly could be a great big city experiment or laboratory for DC was trying to do it. I know they haven't passed it yet, but or I think did it pass?
There's a few places in Maryland that have done it, and you can do it municipally. When you get to the federal level, that's when it gets more complicated with the Constitution. Right. But no, I know I read the article that you're referring to. I wrote something for the Inquirer. I think it was last year, because not like you said, like with not only education, but public spaces, having free, safe places for our young people to gather. I think that could be radically changed if we lower the voting age. I don't know. I say we do it. Let's get together offline and see if we can make this happen for Philadelphia, because that's going to be a big game changer. And I think it's about time. I mean, when you look at, the way that our young people are expressing themselves and are getting involved in politics when they can't vote, imagine what they can do when they can. And I think that's going to be a big game changer.
Yeah, I do. Like, for example, this issue about climate crisis, people are underestimating how much young people across the board, like I don't care, black, white, brown, are petrified. I have a 15-year-old, Gen Z, and I mean, she went to that climate march in D.C. in the Capitol, and they are that's all they talk about. Her and her friends, they're like, what's it going to be like 5-10 years from now? They are petrified about climate crisis. And so they will vote on that. That's when you start, suddenly you have a bunch of 16-year-olds, and they're all voting about climate crisis and the conditions of their schools. Oh, hell yeah. Like, you will get a big response from a lot. People are underestimating, I think, a big power net. One last question, Jen, we could go on for another hour about this, but I don't want to limit it in time. I got you for a few more minutes. The schools, the role of the schools, they've done a really abysmal job in civic literacy. Bad enough that they're doing an abysmal job, especially a school system like the Philadelphia public school system. I mean, I've seen the reading and math scores, but and it's sad that I can't expect much right now in terms of civic literacy, but they should be playing an outsized role in making sure people know what is political process, how does civic engagement, civic participation work.
I agree. And so I'm a public school parent. I have a second grader that goes to our school over here in South Philly. And here's what I can say about that. I don't know the systems or the intention systems or why there isn't a system in place right now for school-wide civics. But what I can say is I know that by a classroom-by-classroom basis, there are fantastic teachers. And it's not just social studies, but English, art, health, that are incorporating civics into their individual lesson plans in classrooms. When I ran for city commissioner, one of the things that I wanted to do and possibly continue to still do maybe through better civics. So Megan, if you're listening, maybe we'll do this separately, but is open source all these great individual lesson plans so that until there is a citywide effort to have a coordinated civics program, the teachers can pick up lesson plans, share lesson plans, and incorporate it. I know art teachers that make nonpartisan voting posters with their students, right? Or do mock elections, or obviously student government, depending on what school you are. I mean, my daughter's school has the most adorable, 6th, 7th, 8th grade student government, and they're making it happen. And so I think let's keep empowering our teachers, giving them the resources that we can give them. And then, obviously we got to fight Harrisburg to get more funding. It's so layered. I mean, again, this is something we can continue to go on and on about. But but I think too, seeing how many people are engaged in voting this cycle. I mean, I know you've been politically involved for a very long time. So have I. The response of organizations and individuals, young and old, that are getting out the vote right now is incredible. And I hope that no matter what the outcome is in November, that we keep the momentum moving. And it has to be year-round. It can't just be this continued race, every 6 months.
I totally agree with you on that. You and I definitely have to touch base and see where there's some synergy there, because we're definitely on the same wavelength. And this is good work. It's a great column. It definitely resonated with me, and I know it's resonating with a lot of other folks. So I'm glad we had you on this week during our Citizen segment. We've been talking with Jen DeVore, co-author of a column, her debut column in the Philadelphia Citizen, along with her colleague Megan Smith. The Real Truth About Voter Apathy is a very good read. Go to thephiladelphiacitizen.org for more information. Also, Jen is co-founder, along with her colleague Megan Smith, of Better Civics. It's a nonpartisan nonprofit. They are working on civic engagement, voter participation. Where can people get more information? BetterCivics.org, Jen?
Yep, you can go to bettercivics.org. You can follow us on social media. And then October 11th, we're going to be at Smith's Playground at 25th and Snyder with Unity in the Community, and all voting is local for some socially distant GOTV stuff. So hope to see you there. And thank you so much. Megan and I were thrilled to be asked to be on the show, so hopefully we'll talk soon.
All right, excellent. Thank you, Jen, and thank you for this work. We'll be in touch. Go to bettercivics.org for more information. Okay, we're going to take a break, and when we come back on the other side, we're supposed to be talking with election security expert Jenny Cohn. She's coming up next. I want to get her thoughts on the debate, because there was a lot of conversation about elections, about election, or this notion of election fraud. It's very alarming. It's very alarming. It's basically the president showing how desperate he is. He doesn't like what he's saying, the signs in the polls. He doesn't like what he's saying in terms of the larger mainstream discourse about him. And so basically throwing all kinds of doubt on. I think that was also a major meaningful moment that alarmed a lot of people during that debate yesterday. One of the more disturbing and frankly dystopic moments in that debate. I want to get Jenny Cohn's thoughts on that. She joins us every week here on Reality Check. That's coming up next. 96.1 FM, 900 AM, WordRadio.com, Word TV, Word app. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Former Vice President Joe Biden.
We have to let people know we're listening, that we not only understand their struggle, but they understand the fact they deserve to be treated with dignity.
Senator Kamala Harris.
Part of the point of freedom is to be free from brutality, from injustice, from racism, and all of its manifestations.
But they're not getting a chance now.
Joe Biden and Kamala Harris have a real plan for police reform.
It means creating a national standard on use of force and conditioning federal funds for police departments on adoption of that standard. It's about giving the United States Department of Justice the subpoena power to investigate systemic police misconduct.
And that's what we're going to do. We're going to change that. I really mean it. I believe with every fiber in my being, we have such an opportunity now to change people's lives for the better. I'm Joe Biden, candidate for president, and I approve this message.
Paid for by Biden for president.
No fear, just facts. This is WURD, independent black media.
Keystone First VIP Choice HMO SNP Dual Eligible Special Needs Plan has a 4 out of 5 star rating and is one of the highest rated Medicare plans in the region. Keystone First VIP Choice and you are better together. If you live in Philadelphia, Bucks, Chester, Montgomery, or Delaware County, and you have both Medicare and Medicaid, choose the Medicare plan that is working to help you get better care. Enjoy extra benefits at no cost to you with Keystone First VIP Choice. You get benefits like dental, vision, and transportation to and from your medical appointments. They also cover a fitness membership to a gym of your choice. $150 toward over-the-counter pharmacy items. There's no copay for doctor's visits. They offer a large provider network, a great prescription plan, dental coverage, and even eyeglasses. Plus, you don't have to wait for open enrollment. You can change your coverage every quarter. Keystone First VIP Choice. The name you trust, the service you deserve. Call Keystone First VIP Choice today at 1-877-686-1760 or visit KeystoneFirstVIPChoice.com.
2020 is the year of voter options. We have many different ways to exercise one of the most important activities in our lifetime. Some of us might be voting by mail, but the rest of us can still vote safely while masked up and social distancing in person at your local polling locations. If you're in Philadelphia, learn more about where your polling location might be at either votespa.com or philadelphiavotes.com. For more information on how to vote in Pennsylvania, visit states.aarp.org/Pennsylvania. Vote early.
Reality Check
with Charles Ellison
right now on Word Radio
and WordRadio.com.
All right, welcome back. I'm not sure, we were trying to get Jenny Cohn, so I don't think we've got her just yet. So in the meantime, I guess we'll just open up the phone lines, right? Yeah, go ahead, Troy. On the phone lines. We don't have Jenny. We'll get, I'm sure maybe we'll get her soon. 215-634-8065. Normally she connects into us by Skype, so you get to not only hear her, but if you're watching Word TV, you get to see her as well. She likes to do that, and we enjoy kind of making that kind of connection possible. 215-634-8065, toll free 866-361-0900. 634-8065, toll free 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. Feel free to call in. Give us, I want to give folks thoughts. I got a lot of thoughts on Facebook Live on Word TV from people who watched the debate last night, and they were giving sort of their thoughts on it. How did you feel it went? What was missing for you? Definitely the points that stood out. The president refusing to condemn white supremacists. He called on them to stand by, whatever that means, is sort of this activation code, stand back and stand by. So, and like within moments, the Proud Boys putting up all sorts of emblems and symbols and logos on their various social media platforms, talking about, stand back, stand by. So I was like, the hell was that? So I remember when we were watching that, like, what does that mean? I was like looking at my daughter, and she's like, Dad, what does that mean? I was like, some activation code, something. So that happened. Also, he's calling on his supporters to watch the polls. That's what I want to talk to Jenny about as far as the election security aspect of this. Is a big lot of time spent on election security issues, on the integrity of the election. The president calling on supporters to watch the polls, and we know what that means. And so people are worried about, people are alarmed, especially when he's just saying, sort of activating or mobilizing white militia groups, domestic terrorist groups. They're not militias, they're domestic terrorist groups to stand by. Then he's saying, okay, well, let's watch the polls. And there's particularly in some of these states where, it's open carry. And so, you might have people showing up at poll locations. I hope this isn't the case, but you have people showing up at polling locations armed and trying to intimidate folks, particularly black voters. So we have to be watchful of that. But any kind of voter intimidation is a federal felony. It's a federal offense. So anyone out there listening in, don't do it. Just don't do it. It's one of the highest forms of federal, like, anti-constitutional felonies. So, like, just don't accept anyone doing it to you, and do not do it to anyone else. Trump also saying that he might not accept the results of the election. He's pretty much saying he won't, amplifying a number of fears that he won't leave office if he loses. So it all depends on margins. I mean, it could be one of these things. I'll talk to a lot of experts and even folks with insights into the psychology of folks like this. And I mean, two things that this is going to hinge on. One, the margin, it's just going to have to be a blowout, like a landslide. Like the margin has to be 5+ points or higher. Even Nancy Pelosi keeps reminding people about that. And she's had behind closed doors interactions with the president. So she would be one of those folks who would know. It's going to have to be 5+ percentage points. It's going to have to be a very, very convincing, where even Trump's like, people just don't like me. I need to just step out. And so the other thing, too, we don't talk enough about are those bureaucratic mechanisms, those law enforcement, those standard civil servants, those folks who are career government officials, career government workers, people within federal law enforcement agencies, the military, et cetera, like the response from them, like if it's clear as day, if everything's been certified that the president has lost by a landslide, he has lost popular vote, he's lost electoral college, everything's been certified, and now the next stage is for him to move on out, what will they do? Right, so they have to, folks like, from even the Secret Service that is assigned to protect him, right? So they all answer to a power higher than, they're supposed to answer to a power higher than the president. So we have to look at like what they're going to, how are they going to enforce? And these aren't just customs and traditions, this is law. So if a president is unelected, then by like January, they need to be out. They need to give up the keys. And so what's that situation going to look like? Will they enforce the law? I wonder about that. I don't think we talk enough about that. Secret Service folks, the military, the Marine barracks brigade that's assigned to the White House, U.S. Marshals, Department of Justice, FBI. Like, what are those folks? Are those folks ready to, if that moment occurs, like, okay, hey, you know what? No, you're done, Mr. President, Mr. Former President. It's time for you to leave. And so, will that be enforced? Will they do what they're supposed to do? So that's something I often think about. Now, I'm quite surprised nobody's really talking about that or gaming out that scenario. So we need to talk more, a little bit more, maybe get an expert on here. I have a few in mind that we've had on the show before. 215-634-8065, toll free 866-361-0900 here on Reality. Jennifer Cohen, she's got her schedule mixed up. Everyone, that's okay, Jenny. Everyone's schedule is mixed up. We might get her. We might actually still get her. We're going to see. I'm not sure what I should do, Troy. She's calling me via Skype, and so I think she's trying to get in. She got her schedule. Yeah, it's been a long night and a long morning, so I'm not sure if we'll be able to get her on. Yeah, we're just going to go ahead and break. Maybe we'll have Jenny Cohn up after this. All right, let me take a quick break, and let's see if we can bring on Jennifer Cohn via Skype to talk about some of that election security, election fraud stuff that came out last night. All right, let's take a break, and we'll be right back.
Charles Ellison, Reality Check on Word Radio and WordRadio.com. We'll be right back.
Recovery starts with a call. Pennsylvania's Substance Use Disorder Hotline is staffed by real people who are trained to help. They're here 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. They'll get you or your loved one into treatment regardless of your access to insurance. If you or someone you know is suffering from addiction, call 1-800-662-HELP. Recovery starts with a call.
Paid for with Pennsylvania taxpayer dollars.
At PICO, we know one thing is certain. Times have changed. From kitchen classrooms to couch conference calls, searching for a new job, or new ways to keep your family connected. These changes have become a part of our reality. That's why our teams are working 24/7 to meet the needs of our communities. So no matter how much things change, you can depend on PICO to be there with the energy and help you need to power through. Learn more at pico.com.
Support independent Black media and join the Forward movement now at 215-425-7875 or visit wordradio.com.
To African Americans, what do you have to lose?
More than we could have ever imagined. Trump's policies make black people less safe, and his downplaying of coronavirus cost black lives. It's time to elect someone who cares about us. Joe Biden. Joe will fight racism and injustice everywhere. He'll expand Obamacare and rebuild our economy so it works for all of us. Request a ballot now. Make a plan to vote. Our lives depend on it.
Paid for by Ask Me People, which is responsible for the content of this ad. AskMePeople.org. Not authorized by any candidate or candidates committee.
Jobs.
Entrepreneurship opportunities. Small business resources.
And financial literacy.
Livelihood. The new initiative from Word Radio to connect Philadelphians to resources to help take the next steps in their professional lives. WordWorks.com features career readiness tools, entrepreneurship resources, funding opportunities, and events to expand your livelihood. Visit WURDworks.com right now and take the next step in your professional journey. Livelihood is supported by the Nightland Fest's Local News Transformation Fund, Borealis Philanthropies Racial Equity and Journalism Fund, and the Solutions Journalism Network.
Reality Check with Charles Ellison right now on Word Radio and WordRadio.com.
All right, welcome back to Reality Check. We got Jenny Cohn on with us, election security expert, nationally renowned election security expert. Go to @JennyCohn, COHN1, @JennyCohn1 on Twitter, where she's highly engaged and got a lot of great information there, especially during this time. You need to tap into what she's talking about and what she's also what sort of information she's putting out there. That's why we bring her on each week around this time here on Reality Check. Jenny, how are you doing?
I'm fine. How are you?
All right, good. Little, obviously a little exhausted. I'm sure you are too. We all had a long night. What are your was quite a bit of time in that debate last night between President Trump and former Vice President Joe Biden, where there were discussions about election fraud. The president really pushing this election fraud narrative that nothing can be trusted with the way this election is being facilitated or officiated. I want to get your initial thoughts and impressions on it. It was very alarming. It was very dangerous talk, the president last night.
You know, so I watched a good portion of the debate and I couldn't handle it. And then my son comes running up and he said, Mom, they're going to talk election integrity. And I'm like, I just can't. So I have to
Wow.
say I didn't hear it, but it sounds like it was more of the same of
Yeah.
what Trump is doing. And, you know, it's interestingly, I mean, I think it is very reminiscent of what he did in 2016 is part of what has me alarmed in a twist that I don't think many people are looking at. He had said the exact same thing in 2016, and the Democrats, I think it was almost like a mind frick, for lack of a better word, where he got the Democrats to oversell the security of our election system so that when we had a suspicious election outcome, the Democrats would have looked like hypocrites had they questioned it or sought an election challenge. And I'm concerned that he's doing the same thing now. And I hope that you have to be kind of subtle, because I do think that Trump is doing it for nefarious reasons. But legitimately, from the Democrat side, there is a possibility that there will be hacking, for example, to help Trump win the election. And we're not there. We don't have the kind of transparency where we can assume that's not going to occur. So I hope that Biden left himself enough room, didn't back himself into the same corner that I think Secretary Clinton did in 2016, where he would look like a hypocrite if he does need to file an election challenge.
Yeah. What should Democrats do then? I mean, in terms of the messaging, you know, you were saying like you don't want to oversell the security too much. I mean, it's a really tricky position that not just Democrats, candidate Biden and his running mate find themselves in, but all of us find ourselves in. I think we are looking at a high turnout election. I mean, at least based on early signs and indications. So how do we psychologically and just, as we wade through the technical morass of each of our individual election issues in our respective jurisdictions and counties, how do we soldier through this, Jenny?
Well, I think it's easier for advocates than for a campaign. So, as an advocate, I point out all the vulnerabilities and then try to pivot at the same time. It is tricky to show what can still be done, because there always are things that can be done, maybe not to eliminate every hole, but to mitigate many of the threats, and you do what you can do. And as a campaign, I just think that they should point out that there's no evidence to back up his claims, and that it is ironic after 2016, where a foreign nation was hacking our infrastructure to help Trump, that he has the audacity to stand up there and accuse voters and Democrats of rigging an election after what happened in 2016 and after the GOP killed every single election security bill. And, it is tricky, though. It's tricky messaging.
Yeah, it really is, because, you want to ensure that people are turning. I understand the position that you're in. That's why I respect so much what you're doing here, because on one hand, you need to make people aware. We need to alarm people. Hey, this is what's happening. This is what's out there. Like real talk. We're just keeping it real with you. But at the same time, you have to also motivate them. You have to mobilize them. You have to get them out on the battlefield. And it really is like a battlefield, because that's what generals have to do, right? It's like that scene out of Braveheart when everyone knows they're going to die. Well, not everyone, but some of the Scots know that they're going to die up against the big, bad British Empire. But they've got a strategy, right? They got a strategy, and it works.
And
we don't have
the Democrats do not appear to have a strategy, and that's what's so frustrating. So their main attorney is Mark Elias, who does really great work on voter suppression. And for some reason, it's okay to talk about voter suppression, but not hacking, which is kind of weird. So he congratulated the nonprofit in Georgia that just got a ruling for backup paper poll books for their glitchy electronic poll books. But Florida doesn't require backup paper poll books. So why is the Democratic Party not following the Coalition for Good Governance's lead? There's still barely time. And what I have tried to do is get the voters to activate on this so that it pressures the Democratic Party and their attorneys to actually do this kind of thing, because they aren't doing it. The Democratic Party isn't doing it. So the voters have to, they're the last line of defense.
Yeah. Why is it, you mentioned something very interesting, Jenny, that like we are apt to have a discussion on voter suppression. We're very nervous about having one about election security. That's why we're bringing you on here every week, because we want people to understand that there is a big election security challenge there. What's going on there, right? I think election security is within that family of voter suppression.
It is.
So I think, but I guess it's so technical in nature. What is it? People are just sort of intimidated by like the type of information that they have to talk about or listen to.
Well, it's something that I want to look into. I have a sense, and maybe I'm wrong about this, but that talk of voter suppression was also kind of taboo until after 2016. By some of I don't think it was an accepted narrative in the sort of, mainstream cable news networks. And I think that Stacey Abrams really moved that ball forward. But she does not. Election security is a subset of that, and that is not particularly what her Fair Fight Action is focused on. They are focused on the somewhat separate, but also very important issue of the non-technical, non-tech related voter suppression. And it may just be the continuum hasn't moved far enough yet on the hacking, but I actually really don't know. The line that always is used is that we don't want to undermine trust in the election system. But when you have aspects of it that aren't trustworthy, I think you have an obligation to tell the public. And, that's why I was trying to get this out there right after 2016 and 2017 to get people to talk about it then when we weren't on the eve of another election. And even then people said you can't do that. And I think it's more dangerous not to talk about it than to talk about it, but it is certainly a fraught subject.
Yeah. And, go ahead, Jean.
Individual candidates also don't want to seem like sore losers, and they're kind of out there on their own if they say that they think their election was stolen. I don't think there typically has been a lot of backup by the national party, and so it kind of puts it in them in a very awkward situation.
We know that that Trump is gearing up. He's ready to not accept the results of the election. I think it's got to be like a really wide, convincing margin. I mean, but that's a whole psychological psychotherapy session on, and we can't really get inside the head of Trump. I don't want to even waste time trying to do that. But what about Biden and the Democrats? I mean, do we have reassurances from them? Are you sufficiently reassured, Jenny, that they are going to bite back hard legally? I mean, have the kind of legal muscle to contest any kind of games that the administration is playing on this, or try? I mean, because what Trump is trying to do is, I mean, it's a coup d'etat. It's staging a coup.
Yes, he's terrifying. He's an authoritarian, and he will cheat to win. And speaking just for myself, I will not accept the result of a Trump win. I do not believe he can win legitimately. I think he already.
Yeah, I don't think so.
With the Postal Service, I think that already arguably falls within the gamut of election fraud. Because I think apparently he targeted the Democratic stronghold. So I personally will not accept a Trump win, but I'm not speaking for the party. I think it's really silly that the conversation is trying to get premature concessions frankly, from anybody. They're trying to get, I'm not defending Trump on this by any means, but that seems to be a Democratic or media strategy that we're going to get the parties in advance to concede before they even see what happens on election night. I mean, if they ask Trump to concede, if they ask Biden to concede, I would say, no, he shouldn't. Of course, it's terrifying from Trump because he also talks about being in office for multiple terms, and he thinks it's something to be celebrated when a respected journalist is shot at by rogue police and hits the pavement because his leg gets injured. He thinks that's really funny. I mean, he's a terrifying person, but I think we're having the wrong conversation when we start saying, will you accept the outcome? I mean, it really should be, why have you fought transparency? Why did you kill all those election security bills? And what will you do to make sure this is a fair result electronically? Because we already know Russia was attacking our infrastructure to help you in 2016. What are you hiding? It should be about what is he hiding, and it should be about transparency, not about asking for concessions before election night.
Yeah, no,
it's just the wrong conversation.
I totally agree with you on that, and we're going to try to push that conversation as much as we can, as best as we can, here on our weekly conversations with Jenny Cohn. Jenny, I'm going to let you go. Really appreciate this. Jennifer Cohn, election security expert. Go to protectourvotes.org for more information there, more tips on what you can do to navigate this very, very contentious, caustic election cycle, but we all have to get on that battlefield. We're going to have to soldier through. Go to @JennyCohn, COHN1, on social media, on Twitter, where you can definitely get regular insights from her and regular engagement. Jenny, always a pleasure talking with you.
It's great talking to you also. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Okay. Do we take a break, Troy? Or we just go ahead and open up phone lines? 215-634-8065, toll free 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check in our final stretch of the Wednesday edition of Reality Check. 215-634-8065, toll free 866-361-0900. Phone lines are open while we're in the final stretch of our Wednesday midweek edition of Reality Check. 215-634-8065, toll free 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. Also, just a bit of local business as far as Philadelphia is concerned, because the president was saying last night, President Trump was saying, bad things happen in Philly. And, bad things are always happening in Philly. Bad things do happen in Philly, like this gun violence and this homicide rate we've got here. It's still 36% above where it was this time last year. There have been about 346 homicides in the city of Philadelphia. So I know, a lot of people were really upset and irritated about what the president had said last night about Philly, calling Philly out like that. And obviously a lot of that Philly pride set in. This violence rate in Philadelphia is nothing to be proud of. So I hope people understand that, so we can, cast aspersions and buck up at the president all we want, and get all in our feelings about what he said about Philly, how he called Philly out. Well, then do better, so people aren't calling you out. It's so simple. Stop trashing, for example, stop trashing your streets, stop trashing your neighborhoods, so people can't call you Philadelphia. It's like people in Philly, we have a habit of setting ourselves up for those kinds of critiques and criticisms. So, Philly has a very, and I'm sure he's noticing it, it has the second highest big city homicide rate in the country right now. It's that there's also a dumpster fire raging, as people now have been using that term quite a bit, dumpster fire, but there's definitely a dumpster fire raging in Philadelphia right now with the crime, with the violent crime. And so something has to be done about it. Maybe we'll hear some more. I don't know what we're going to hear out of City Council tomorrow with respect to that. But right now it's a very sad situation and something we need to continue to focus on. We're going to have some future conversations. They're on the horizon here on Reality Check. Just trying to figure out, solutions, trying to figure out some ideas, come up with some creative ideas to take care of that violence rate. And violence, also another thing we're doing, and I'm getting people here and there. Still, there was a caller or a listener who had submitted a rather concerning, troubling illegal trash spot in West Philly. I think it was in Councilman Curtis Jones' district, and Jacqueline Brown, and she was telling me just this morning, I received a message from her saying she hadn't yet gotten any. We did get a response, a really good response, thoughtful response from State Representative Donna Bullock. Have not heard from Councilman Curtis Jones' district yet, so as far as whether or not that's being taken care of. So I really encourage people, send me an email, cellison@wordradio.com, with a picture of that trash site, the address, and the councilperson's district. And so we'll see, and we'll start posting those periodically on Twitter and tagging folks and seeing if we can get some movement on that and trying to get Philly to be a cleaner place. But that also is aligned with, correlates very, very greatly with the violence issue. So, if Philly as a community starts showing that it truly cares about the, cares about the scenery, cares about how it looks, how neighborhoods look, how clean it is, you'll start seeing some changes. You'll start seeing, people thinking twice, certain people thinking twice. That's not the only way to get, obviously there's a need for a comprehensive strategy and investments, there's a need, that's where you need some tangibles to, ensure that this violence is eliminated but where this level of violence is eliminated. But it's a real good start. It's a real good start in the right direction, and it's a good morale booster in communities that really need it. And so we are starting to see signs throughout Philadelphia of certain neighborhoods taking matters into their own hands and starting to clean up the neighborhoods. We need to get the streets department and city leadership needs to get on it as well. So, but this has to be a collaborative. Everyone has to do it. You can't just rely on City Hall alone, but we'll try to help facilitate those conversations and get that word out, to make sure that we're all on board, to make Philly a cleaner, healthier, and safer place, right? All right, the source with the Black Women's Leadership Council is coming up next. I wonder how they feel about this debate last night. Can't wait to listen to them. They are coming up next here on WURD. Keep your WURD radio dial locked in on 96.1 FM, 900 AM, of course, and wordradio.com. I'm at Ellison Report on Twitter.com. I had been live tweeting, actually. I was live tweeting. You can still find clips of that at hashtag #WordOnPolitics. Was live tweeting, had a little fun there, and I was featured in Politico last night too. Politico, the great political magazine, reaches out to me after all these debates and always wants to get my take on what happened. So go to Politico.com and you'll be able to see my take along with other strategists and political insiders talking about what had happened in last night's debate. So go to Politico.com for more on that. In the meantime, City Council Live is tomorrow. It's Thursday. Thursdays, you know what that means. It's City Council Live. So hopefully they'll be starting up 10 a.m. sharp. Always like when they do that. Always love when they do that. Can't wait to see what they're up to and what they're going to be deliberating on. So keep your radio dial locked in, especially Philly residents or for those outside of Philly. If you want to know what our City Council is up to, it's the only place where you get gavel-to-gavel coverage of a major big city council here on WURD. I'll be hosting that tomorrow, so looking forward to that. I want to thank Troy Wilmore on the Board of Steel getting it done. Thank all our previous guests, and thank you to people who called in. All those comments too, very thoughtful comments, really intelligent discourse happening on our Word TV, on our Facebook live stream. Thanks so much for that. All right, Philly, want you to stay sharp, stay smart, but more importantly, please, yes, stay safe out there, okay? And have a great afternoon, good evening, and God willing, I will see you, I'll talk to you tomorrow, 10 a.m. sharp for City Council Live. Take care, we're signing off.